Chapter 1536. Replying to Marquis, I am only from a side branch of the Wang clan of Taiyuan. I passed the imperial examination in the 4th year of Wuda and was promoted to the provincial governor of Bing Province by His Majesty in the 9th year of Wuda. Bing Province, Provincial Governor's Mansion. Hearing Li Zixuan's question, Wang Liaoyuan solemnly cupped his hands and replied, I see. Li Zixuan nodded thoughtfully. I didn't expect His Majesty to use the Wang clan's carrier pigeon to deliver the imperial edict. This time, your Wang clan has done me a great favor. When this matter is over, I will personally write a letter to thank the Wang clan's patriarch. Taiyuan was the Wang clan's headquarters. It was normal to meet a few people from the Wang clan here. Thinking of this, Li Zixuan finally felt relieved. However, Li Er's choice of carrier pigeon to deliver the imperial edict was truly out of Li Zixuan's expectations. This was definitely a groundbreaking move. Looking at the history, there shouldn't be any emperor who thought of using carrier pigeon to deliver the imperial edict. Li Er's last-minute innovation was truly amazing. I also didn't expect His Majesty to use the Wang clan's carrier pigeon to deliver the imperial edict to Bing Province. Coincidentally, Marquis is in the provincial governor's mansion right now. I have to say, Marquis is truly a man of destiny. Heaven is helping him. Wang Liaoyuan couldn't help but sigh with emotion. In fact, the Wang clan of Taiyuan had a good relationship with Li Er and Li Zixuan. With Princess Tang, the Wang clan of Taiyuan was a family to Li Er. Not to mention using the carrier pigeon, Wang Yu wouldn't refuse even if the Wang clan paid for it. And with Wang Renbiao, the Wang clan of Taiyuan could be considered an ally to Li Zixuan. Although it wasn't to the point where they would live and die together, the two sides wouldn't refuse to take care of each other. Of course, it was because of this that Wang Liaoyuan didn't get angry when Li Zixuan placed the Windchaser sword on his neck. If it was someone else, it would be impossible. After all, Wang Liaoyuan was the provincial governor of a province. He still cared about his reputation. Although Li Zixuan was a marquis, he couldn't humiliate a provincial governor like this. Li Zixuan said seriously, I have the emperor's help. Now that there is an imperial edict to mobilize the troops, can I mobilize the troops of the Bing province camp? Wang Liaoyuan hurriedly cupped his fists. This official will bring Marquis to the Bing province barracks. It was all thanks to Empress Zhongsun that Li Er thought of using carrier pigeons to send the imperial edict. In the early hours of this morning, Li Tai returned to the palace from Yanhuang College and reported the situation at Yunshan to Li Er. Li Er was angry and issued an imperial edict to let Li Zixuan cooperate with the troops of the northern provinces to capture Wu Jie. Li Tai pleaded for mercy, but to no avail. He could only return to the college and pass on his father's edict to Li Zixuan through the telegraph. After Li Tai left the palace, Empress Zhongsun, who had been listening quietly to the side, opened her mouth. Your Majesty, the Marquis of Yong'an is now in Shouyang, which is thousands of li away from Chang'an City. Even if he gallops, he can only reach Taiyuan by dawn, which is very far from Chang'an City. If he wants to mobilize the troops in the Bing province area, he must have your imperial edict. The imperial edict sent by Qin Ke through the telegraph doesn't count, and the local officials and generals will definitely not recognize it. In the Tang Dynasty used Emperor Taizong Li Shimon's 2 steps, 1 step each on the left and right feet, as the standard. It was called step, and 300 steps was 1 li. 1/5 of a step was 1 qi. According to historical records, a qi in the Tang Dynasty was 0.303 meters, and 1 li was 454.2 meters. So 600 or 700 kilometers in the modern era was more than 1,000 li in the Tang Dynasty. At that time, when Li Er heard this, he felt that it made sense and couldn't help frowning. Chang'an City is 800 kilometers away from Taiyuan City. Even at top speed, it would take at least a day and a night, But in that time, with Wu Jie's martial grandmaster cultivation, wouldn't he have already left Taiyuan City? No. We can't let him leave the Tang Dynasty with the secret information of the Academy. At the end, Li Er couldn't help but punch the dragon pillar beside him. Seeing this, Empress Jiangxuan's eyes flashed. She stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, I have a way to get the imperial edict to Taiyuan as soon as possible. If Li Zixuan happens to be in Taiyuan, that would be even better. If he isn't, we can ask the Bingzhou provincial governor to send someone to find Li Zixuan on a fast horse." Hearing this, Li Er's eyes suddenly lit up. He said with surprise, "Oh? Guanyin, what wonderful plan do you have? Tell me." Empress Zhongsun smiled and said, "What wonderful plan can I have? Your Majesty is just confused and didn't think of it. Actually, this matter is very simple. Your Majesty, do you still remember who the current Bingzhou provincial governor is?" Li Er frowned and seriously thought for a while before replying, "If I remember correctly, the Bingzhou provincial governor should be Wang Liaoyuan. In the 9th year of Wuda, Li Er usurped the throne. Wang Liaoyuan was made the Bingzhou provincial governor by Li Er that year, so Li Er had some impression of him." Empress Zhongsun smiled faintly and said, "That's right. Your Majesty, do you know that Wang Liaoyuan is from the Wang family of Taiyuan? The Wang family of Taiyuan has many carrier pigeons in their mansion in Chang'an." Li Er was smart and instantly understood what Empress Zhongsun wanted to express. He raised his brows and said in surprise, "Guanyin wants me to use the Wang family's carrier pigeon to send the imperial decree to Bingzhou provincial governor Wang Lian and then have him pass it to Li Zixuan. Is that right?" Carrier pigeons were mainly used to send messages by the nature of carrier pigeons. They didn't return to their nests for the sake of sending messages. Therefore, they could only bring the pigeons out and release them to send messages back to their nest. The carrier pigeons of the Wang family of Chang and were brought out from the Wang family's contact points in the various provinces. It was because of this that Li Er could use carrier pigeons to quickly send the imperial edict to Wang Liaoyuan. "Your Majesty is wise." Empress Zhongsun nodded and said with a smile. Li Er couldn't help but laugh loudly, "Haha! Good. Use the carrier pigeons of the Wang family. Wu Jie probably never dreamed that I would prepare an inescapable trap for him at the border of the Tang Turks." Bang! Ouch! In Qing province on the official road outside Anhua County, a dirty little beggar ran too fast and accidentally bumped into a black-clothed man wearing a bamboo hat. Because the force was mutual, the little beggar was knocked to the ground by the reaction force. Then, he rolled like a carp and stood up. With a face full of panic, he bowed and apologized to the black-clothed man. "Hero, spare me! Hero, spare me! I didn't mean to bump into you." He saw that the black-clothed man had a mace on his back and was dressed like a martial artist, so he subconsciously thought that the man was a hero who knew martial arts. The black-clothed man stood still, and behind him stood 4 other men in black. After a moment of silence, the black-clothed man stretched out a hand and said, "Give me my money pouch, and I'll spare your life." His voice was abnormally hoarse, like a demon from hell. The little beggar was frightened and couldn't help but take 2 steps back. He stuttered, What money pouch? You want to take advantage of the situation?" The black-clothed man coldly said, "I don't want to say it a second time." Although the little beggar's little action, when he bumped into him, was very subtle, how could it escape his eyes? He was a top martial artist in the world. Hearing this, the little beggar suddenly felt weak. He hesitantly took out a brown purse from his sleeve and handed it over. Wu Jie took it, but the little beggar suddenly knelt down on the ground and looked up at the black-clothed man, begging, "Brother Wu Jie, please don't hesitate to ask for my help. Hero, I didn't mean to steal your money pouch. My mother is sick, and the doctors in the city need money to treat her. I can't earn that much money, but my mother's condition is getting worse and worse. I beg Hero to take pity on me and give me some money to save my mother." The black-clothed man didn't lower his head, still looking straight ahead. After a long silence, he put his right hand into his money pouch and pulled out 2 soybean-sized golden beans. He bent down and patted the little beggar's palm, then said, "Scram?" In his words, there wasn't the slightest bit of righteousness that one would have when doing favors to others. Instead, it was more of impatience. However, the little beggar wasn't unhappy because of the black-clothed man's attitude, because he received 2 golden beans. "Thank you, Hero. Thank you, Hero. I'll scram now." The little beggar cried tears of joy. He kowtowed 3 times to the black-clothed man, then got up and quickly left. The black-clothed man took the 4 people behind him and walked towards Anhua County. He planned to replenish his rations in the city. Giddy, giddy. Chang, an urgent report. The Tujue imperial tutor has sneaked into Tang Dynasty and is currently fleeing to the north. Citizens, quickly look at Wu Jie's portrait and provide information on his whereabouts. Anyone who can find him will be rewarded 1,000 strings of cash. At this moment, a soldier suddenly rushed out from the south side of the official road. The soldier shouted as he galloped on his horse. By the time he finished speaking, the man and horse had already passed the black-clothed man's current position and were heading towards Anhua County. Reward 1,000 strings of cash? Is this real? Chang and sent an urgent report. How can it be fake? Let's go take a look. Yes, we have to go take a look. What if I saw the Tujue imperial tutor? 1,000 strings of cash. With a great reward, there will be brave men. The reward of 1,000 strings of cash caused the citizens to go into an uproar. The pedestrians on the official road immediately rushed towards the city gates. But there was an exception. The black-clothed man stopped and the man behind him whispered, "Imperial tutor, it seems like the Emperor of Tang Dynasty has already sent out wanted posters everywhere. We can't enter Anhua County. Not only can we not enter this county, we can't enter the other counties either." That's right, this black-clothed man was Wu Jie, who had escaped from Chang'an. The 4 people behind him were Turkic warriors who had followed him from the Turks to Tang Dynasty. That night, Wu Jie had not brought them into Cloud Mountain because he was confident in his own strength, and because bringing too many people would make it easier for them to be discovered. Moreover, retreating would be very troublesome. Wu Jie stood with his hands clasped behind his back, squinting his eyes as he looked outside the walls of Anhua County. A group of citizens had gathered there, and a wanted poster had just been posted on the walls. After a moment of silence, Wu Jie clenched his fists and said, "From now on, take the small roads and not the official roads. If we can't enter the county, we'll take a detour. Find the farmers in the villages to replenish our rations." "Yes, Imperial tutor." The man behind Wu Jie quickly straightened his back and cupped his fists. "His Majesty has given this Marquis the authority to control the soldiers of the northern 32 provinces. This Marquis wishes to transfer 30,000 elites from the Bing province barrack. General Su, do you have any objections?" As noon approached, Li Zishuan, led by Wang Liaoyuan, finally arrived at the Bing province barracks outside the city. This barracks was very large, and the tents alone stretched for several dozen li. Li Zishuan conservatively estimated that this barracks could hold at least 100,000 soldiers. After patrolling the barracks, Li Zishuan asked a general beside him. This general was called Su Tingde, the commandant of the Bing province barracks. When Li Ji was not present, he was the boss of the barracks. Hearing this, Su Tingde hurriedly cupped his fists and said, "Marquis, with His Majesty's decree in hand, how could this general dare to disobey? Marquis wants 30,000 soldiers. This general will go and transfer them for you." Li Zishuan let out a sigh of relief and said, "Then I'll have to trouble General Su." Su Tingde cupped his fists and said, "Marquis is too polite." Dong dong dong. A moment later, the drums in the Bing province barracks were beaten. This was the sound of the drums to gather the soldiers. Not long later, countless of government soldiers headed towards the direction of the academy examination stage. Su Ting wanted to gather the soldiers in front of Li Zixuan. After everyone stood still, Li Zixuan looked around and saw that the vast field was densely packed with people. There were at least 70 to 80,000 people. Marquis, these are the 80,000 soldiers of the Bing province barrack. Among them, the A barracks is the most elite and the B barracks are slightly behind. Su Tingda turned his head and said to Li Zixuan. Chapter 1537. If Wu Jie wants to escape the Great Tang in the shortest time possible, the route he would take would be from Chang'an, through Feng Province, Ning Province, Qing Province, Jiang Province, Shuo Province, and then from Huayuan to the steppe. Based on the speed of the martial grandmaster, Wu Jie has probably already passed through Feng Province, perhaps even reached Qing Province. What we need to do now is to set up an ambush at the passes that must be passed between Qing Province and the steppe. Wu Jie would never have imagined that the northern provinces of the Great Tang would react so quickly. Li Zixuan led the army out of the city at top speed and headed straight for Jiang Province in the west after organizing the 30,000 soldiers who were skilled in battle formations. On the road, Li Zixuan analyzed the situation to Su Tingda. Because he didn't have any generals he was familiar with, and he didn't have the time to familiarize himself with the people around him, Li Zixuan could only do everything himself and slowly build up a tacit understanding with the soldiers from Bing Province. Only after he understood the abilities of the people around him could he gradually delegate authority to others. Fortunately, Su Tingda, the commandant of Bing Province's subjugation prefecture, was rather capable and experienced on the battlefield. Most importantly, he was obedient and didn't have the rebellious nature of the veteran generals. He carefully listened to Li Zixuan's every word and cupped his fist. Marquis's words are reasonable. This is the shortest route from Chang'an to the steppe. But this general estimates that in order to avoid the pursuit of the imperial court, Wu Jie might not take the official road, but the smaller ones. As long as we guard the important passes that he must pass through, we'll definitely be able to intercept him. Li Zixuan nodded, and after a few moments he asked, Commandant Su has been stationed in Bing Province for many years, so you must be more familiar with the passes in the north than this Marquis. In Commandant Su's opinion, should this Marquis dispatch soldiers to those passes? In truth, he had a map of the Great Tang in his mind, and he was clearly aware of the passes in the north. He had only asked this question because he wanted to test Su Tingda. Of course, for Su Tingda himself, he was very happy to accept this consideration. Earlier, Li Zixuan had already stated the purpose of this deployment, to surround and capture Wu Jie. For Su Tingda, this was an excellent opportunity to render meritorious service. If he performed well in this battle and received a little bit of support from Li Zixuan, then he might be promoted by another rank. Don't be fooled by Su Tingda's uncouth appearance. This fellow was very meticulous. In the past year, Li Zixuan had been promoted like a rocket, becoming the most dazzling upstart in the imperial court in recent years. Perhaps no one in the younger generation could compare to him in the glory of the emperor's favor. Moreover, putting aside his official position, Li Zixuan was also a martial arts grandmaster. Even though he had never been on the battlefield before, Su Tingda did not dare to underestimate him, so he had been carefully and conscientiously waiting on the side. Replying to Marquis, this general believes that we should first set up an ambush at Longmen Pass, as it is the closest to the Qing province. Secondly, we should dispatch a small number of troops to Longmen Pass, Yonghe Pass, and even Yanmen Pass. Firstly, we should prevent Wu Jie from passing through Longmen Pass. Secondly, if we fail to stop Wu Jie at Longmen Pass, the remaining 3 passes should be able to delay him for a while. Most importantly, these 4 passes have always been contested by military strategists since ancient times. They are the only passes on the way to the steppe, and they are also the only passes on the way to the Central Plains. If Wu Jie wants to go around them, he would have to travel at least 500 or 600 li, so he can't go around them. After thinking for a while, Su Tingda cupped his fists to Li Zixuan. In ancient times, there were many places that military strategists fought over. Some modern people might not understand why there were places that military strategists fought over, and why would they spend a huge amount of troops to capture these places? Couldn't they just go around them? In fact, these strategic locations were generally divided into two types. One was a pass, and the other was an important town. A pass was a strategic pass. Under normal circumstances, the terrain on both sides of the pass was mountainous, making it impossible to go around it. However, an important town could be bypassed, but if one didn't attack such an important town and instead went around it, it would make the entire military operation meaningless, and it would be easy to be caught in a pincer attack. The Longmen Pass, Longmen Pass, Longmen Pass, Yonghe Pass, and Yanmen Pass that Su Tingda mentioned all belonged to this type of strategic pass. Hearing this, Li Zixuan's face couldn't help showing a trace of praise, nodding with a smile. Good. In Wu Jie's opinion, the northern provinces of the Great Tang still hadn't received the news that he was wanted by the imperial court, so they hadn't effectively organized their forces to intercept him. Under these circumstances, it was even less likely that he would deliberately go around the pass. Since that's the case, this marquis will now take 10,000 soldiers to Longmen Pass. Commandant Su, you will take the remaining 20,000 soldiers and head north. Take this marquis order and the imperial edict to set up defenses at Longmen Pass, and Yanmen Pass. If necessary, you can have the soldiers of the nearby provinces assist you. This marquis will set up an inescapable net that will make it impossible for Wu Jie to escape. Through these considerations, Li Zixuan discovered that Su Tingda had some talent as a general. Although he hadn't heard of this person in the history books, in the 5,000 years of history of China, it was impossible for every capable person to leave their name in the annals of history, right? Those who were buried in the long river of history might not all be incapable people. It was precisely because of this consideration that Li Zixuan decided to have Su Tingda lead an army to set up defenses in the north. But then again, the only capable general by his side who could take charge of a region on his own was Su Tingda. If he didn't choose this person, who else could he choose? Su Tingda's heart suddenly shook, and a trace of excitement flashed in his eyes. He quickly cupped his fists and said, "Many thanks for Marquis trust. However, this general suggests that Marquis lead 20,000 soldiers to guard Longmen Pass, while this subordinate leads 10,000 elite soldiers to set up defenses in the north. After all, Wu Jie is most likely still in the Qing province region. Longmen Pass will soon usher in a fierce battle. In comparison, the three passes in the north are less likely to be in danger." He was worried that if he left too few soldiers behind, Li Zixuan might be in danger. Li Zixuan thought for a moment, but in the end, he shook his head and said, "You don't need to worry about this marquis. Even if Wu Jie has yet to reach Longmen Pass, the 10,000 soldiers this marquis has brought are enough to guard Longmen Pass. I have you lead the remaining 20,000 soldiers to the northern passes not only to prevent Wu Jie from escaping, but also to prevent the Turkic army from the north." Su Tingda couldn't help but be shocked by these words, and he asked in shock, "Marquis, you mean that the Turks will send an army to invade the borders of our Great Tang?" This was big news. Although the Great Tang and the Turks occasionally had friction, those were only small skirmishes. Once the Turks officially invaded the heartland of the Great Tang, it would mean that the two countries were about to go to war. The Wei River Alliance in the 9th year of Wuda was because the Great Tang had just experienced internal strife and didn't have the strength to take on such a tough battle, so it chose to compromise. But now, the Great Tang was unprecedentedly strong, and anyone who understood the situation could see that within 3 years, the Great Tang would definitely take revenge for the siege of their city. Now that he heard Li Zishuan say that the Turks might attack the passes in the north, Su Tingda instantly felt that a national war was about to descend. Li Zishuan thoughtfully nodded and said, "Very likely. Do you know what Wu Jie stole from the great Tang?" "He stole the most important batch of confidential information from Yanhuang College. As long as the Turks learn what is in there, in less than a year, the Turks will be at least twice as strong as they are now. At that time, the great Tang will have no power to fight back against the Turks. With such an important item, do you think that Xieli will not send soldiers to receive Wu Jie?" His expression turned solemn as he cupped his fists and said, "Marquis, don't worry. This general will definitely guard the passes in the north, and will definitely not let the Turks enter the great Tang's territory." Li Zishuan nodded and said, "That's for the best. Quickly take 20,000 elite soldiers to the north." Su Tingda cupped his fists and replied loudly, "Yes, this general will go right away." Then, he turned around and shouted to the soldiers behind him, "3rd Battalion, 4th Battalion, 5th Battalion, and 6th Battalion, listen up. Immediately follow this general to Madugwan." "Yes." The 20,000 soldiers replied loudly and then changed their path and followed Su Tingda to the north. On the other hand, Li Zishuan led the remaining 10,000 soldiers and continued to advance towards the Longmen Pass. Ga. When the army reached a hillside in Longmen County, 2 Ga sounds suddenly came from the sky. The sound was a little like the cry of a goose. Li Zishuan looked up and saw a wild goose flying over his head toward the southwest. But at this moment a xiao sound was heard, and a sharp arrow shot out from the forest on the hillside, heading straight for the wild goose. No, to be precise, it was heading straight for the wild goose's mouth. The arrow pierced into the wild goose's body, and it let out a sad cry. It immediately fell from the sky and coincidentally landed 3 feet in front of Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan quickly reined in Big White. Seeing this, the soldiers behind him also stopped in their track. The soldiers beside Li Zishuan thought that they had encountered an ambush and quickly shouted, "Assassins! Quickly protect Marquis!" Swish, swish, swish. The soldiers all drew the modeo from their waists and scattered around Li Zishuan. They stared at the hillsides on both sides with vigilance. Li Zishuan waved his hand helplessly and said, "Everyone, back down." In his opinion, this was probably someone shooting wild geese on the hillside. What did it have to do with assassins? These people were a little too nervous. Everyone looked at each other and could only put away their modeo. At this moment, Li Zishuan jumped down from Debai's back and walked in front of the wild goose. Upon closer inspection, he was shocked to find that the arrow from just now had coincidentally shot into the wild goose's mouth. The hunter who had yet to show himself actually took advantage of the moment the wild goose opened its mouth and accurately shot the arrow into the wild goose's mouth. This kind of control over timing and arm strength was definitely not something an ordinary person could do. An expert. Li Zishuan didn't expect that he would encounter an expert of this level in this remote and desolate place. He could not help but become serious and shouted to the hillside on the right, "Which warrior shot the wild goose? Quickly take it back." However, the forest was silent and no one responded. The hunters on the hillside were probably too scared to come out after seeing such a scene at the foot of the hill. After a while, just as Li Zishuan was about to leave, the hunter on the hillside finally spoke, "Can I really take it back? You won't catch me, right?" The voice was a little immature, but it sounded quite imposing. Li Zishuan could not help but be a little surprised. This was because from the voice, the person on the hillside did not seem very old. Thinking of this, he could not help but become more interested in the hunter on the hillside. Thus he shouted, "Warrior, you must be joking. Why would I catch a commoner for no reason? You just need to come down and take the wild goose. This wild goose has no external injuries. It should be able to sell for a good price." Chapter 1538. Xue Rengui, full name Li and courtesy name Rengui, was born in the southern ancestral house of the Hudong Xue clan. He was the sixth-generation grandson of Northern Wei's Hudong King Xueandu, and could be considered to be from a prestigious family. However, when Xue Rengui was 8 years old, his father, Xue Gui, passed away due to an illness. Since then, the Xue clan declined. Of course, Xue Rengui had never given up on his martial arts while farming. The Xue family used to be a rich and powerful family. Although they had declined, they still had a rich collection of books. In addition, Xue Rengui was quite talented. Relying on the family's martial arts manuals, he was able to learn some sword and archery skills without a teacher. Therefore, although he was only 15 or 16 years old, his martial arts had already reached the chi-forming realm. Moreover, the archery skills he had displayed while shooting the geese was far superior to many of the older generation's experts. "You're Xue Rengui?" On the mountain road of Longmen County in Jiang Province, Li Zixuan asked casually. He didn't expect to receive such a shocking answer. He widened his eyes and asked in disbelief, "Marquis, how do you know my handwriting?" This time, it was Xue Rengui's turn to be stunned. He opened his mouth and looked at Li Zixuan as if he had seen a ghost. About that, Li Zixuan knew that he had misspoken. He looked a little embarrassed. After thinking about it, he began to justify himself. "Rengui, do you know who I am?" Xue Rengui shook his head subconsciously and said, "I don't know." Ahem. Li Zixuan coughed softly and said, "I am Li Zixuan, the Marquis of Yong, unpersonally conferred by the Emperor. I am also the Yamacho of Yanhuang College." Xue Rengui heard this and was both surprised and excited. He cupped his fists and said, "You are the Marquis of Yong'an? I admire Marquis the most. I didn't expect to see the real face of Marquis today. It is a blessing of 3 lifetimes." With that, he bowed to Li Zixuan with a sincere expression. At this time, he had already forgotten to ask Li Zixuan how he knew his name was Xue Rengui. Li Zixuan raised his hands and laughed. "Ha ha! I didn't think that my name would spread all the way to Hudong Road. Rengui, you don't need to be polite. Please rise." Xue Rengui straightened up and said seriously, "Marquis built the curved plow, the water wheel, the academy, and the industrial school. Now, he is leading the children of the fief to destroy the plague of locusts. He has long been famous. How can I not know the name of Marquis?" After being praised by Xue Rengui, the future general of Tang, Li Zixuan felt a little embarrassed. He coughed dryly and said, "Ahem. This Marquis has only done what he should have done in his position and in his political affairs. That's all. Oh right, didn't you ask me why I know your handwriting? Coincidentally, there is a teacher in Yanhuang College who happens to be from Longmen County. He seems to be acquainted with your grandfather. He mentioned you in front of me before." Xue Rengui couldn't help but ask, "Marquis, who is this teacher from Yanhuang College?" Li Zixuan smiled and said, "Wang Ji Wang Wugong. Rengui, you must have heard of him." Coincidentally, Wang Ji's hometown was also Longmen County in Jiang Province. He was from the same hometown as Xue Rengui. Furthermore, Wang Ji was also from a prestigious family. In a small county, it was impossible for 2 prestigious families to not know each other, right? Therefore, Li Zixuan had an idea and used Wang Ji as a shield. Xue Rengui's expression changed slightly and he couldn't help but sigh. "So it's Mr. Wang from Donggaozi. I didn't expect him to still remember the Xue family." Li Zixuan saw that it was getting late. The battle ahead was more important. Even if he thought highly of Xue Rengui, he couldn't stay here for too long. After all, the most important thing right now was to catch Wu Jie. Therefore, he cupped his hands and smiled. "Ha ha! Rengui's archery today has opened this Marquis' eyes. It's getting late, and this Marquis still has important matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first. Rengue, if you want to join the army or go to Chang and to seek a way out, just come to Yunshan to find this marquis. Today was only his first meeting with Shui Rengue. He couldn't directly invite Shui Rengue to join the army, right? That wouldn't be in line with the rules. Moreover, Shui Rengue most likely wouldn't agree. In history, Shui Rengue had joined the army at the age of 30 under the persuasion of his wife, Lady Lu. At that time, Li Er was on a campaign against Liaodong, setting a big stage for Shui Rengue. However, Shui Rengue didn't disappoint. On many occasions, he single-handedly took the heads of enemy generals and made a name for himself. The current Shui Rengue was only in his teens. On one hand, he was still lacking in martial arts and strategy. On the other hand, he probably hadn't thought about joining the army yet. As an outsider, Li Zishuan naturally couldn't persuade him. This kind of thing depended on luck. Shui Rengue's eyes flashed. He looked at the more than 10,000 soldiers behind Li Zishuan, then cupped his fists and asked, Rengue may be so bold as to ask, what is Marquis's purpose in coming here? Li Zishuan's face turned solemn as he said in a deep voice, the Turkic state preceptor took advantage of this Marquis's disaster relief in the north to sneak into Yunshan and attack the academy. Not only did he injure the teachers, students, and guards of the academy, he also stole some of the academy's secret book. He wants to bring them back to the Turks. If he successfully escapes back to the Turks, it will definitely be a disaster for our great Tang. Therefore, this Marquis has transferred 10,000 soldiers from Bing province to intercept him at Longmen Pass. Shui Rengue was shocked and angry. This Turkic state preceptor is actually so bold. Li Zishuan nodded and said, This Marquis will remember this debt. If there is a chance in the future, I will definitely return it double. Right now, the most important thing is to make sure that Wu Jie stays in the Great Tang. Rengue, go back. We will part here. If you go to the capital in the future, if you need any help, don't hesitate to look for this Marquis. Then, he waved his hand to the army behind him and shouted, Set off. Continue marching. Yes. The soldiers roared in response. Shui Rengue hurriedly stepped aside and then cupped his fist to Li Zishuan. Marquis, take care. For him, to be able to meet Li Zishuan, the popular person of the imperial court, and the person he admired the most, was very unexpected. But just like Li Zishuan's previous concerns, Shui Rengue also had his own concerns. He couldn't just listen to Li Zishuan and join the army just because they met once and then ask for Li Zishuan's help. In other people's eyes, Shui Rengue was trying to curry favor with the rich and powerful. This was something Shui Rengue couldn't tolerate. Therefore, he didn't agree to Li Zishuan's request to join the army. But today, Li Zishuan's suggestion opened a door in his heart. Now that his family was in decline, why couldn't he join the army, kill enemies on the battlefield, and completely restore the Shui family? Standing by the side of the road, Shui Rengue watched as Li Zishuan's group gradually disappeared into the distance. Only after the army had disappeared from his field of vision did Shui Rengue turn around and head southeast with the wild goose that he had shot down. His gaze seemed to have become even more resolute. Now that the defense of Longmen Pass has been replaced by our people, in a while, pass down the order. If you see someone wearing a black robe and carrying a mace, immediately warn them. The rest of you hide in the dark and don't act rashly. When you hear the warning, immediately come out from all directions and surround Wu Jie. In the large tent next to Longmen Pass, Li Zishuan looked at the dozen or so officers from the A and B camps in front of him and gave his orders in a deep voice. From Bing Province to Longmen Pass in Jiang Province, they only took 4 hours to rush the entire way. After arriving here, Li Zishuan directly ordered people to replace all the guards here. However, because he gave the imperial edict to Su Ting, it was inevitable that there would be some friction. However, the official soldiers of Bing Province were quite strong and only used 20 or so people to take down the original guards. Li Zishuan specifically let one person go and let him go to the provincial governor of Jiang province. As for himself, he took advantage of this time to arrange the next step of the defense for the generals in the army. This general obeys. The soldiers in the tent all cupped their hands and bowed. Li Zishuan nodded and continued to give orders. The defense of Longmen Pass must be relaxed on the outside and tight on the inside. We can't let Wu Jie notice anything amiss and directly escape from somewhere else. The 10,000 soldiers that we brought today are not allowed to set up tents or cook. They can only lie in ambush at the prearranged location. If anyone dares to alert the enemy, don't blame this Marquis for being impolite. At this point, Li Zishuan's face began to turn cold. One of the officers couldn't help but ask, "Marquis, if we can't cook, what will the soldiers eat?" Li Zishuan said indifferently, "Dry rations. Provincial Governor Wang will soon send over a batch of dry rations for the soldiers to distribute to each camp. Everyone will suffer for the next 2 days, but when we capture Wu Jie, all the suffering you've suffered today will be worth it." The officer paused for a moment, then cupped his fists and replied, "Marquis is wise. Marquis, the provincial governor of Jiang province, Lord Hong, requests an audience." Right at this moment, a soldier walked in quickly and bowed as he spoke. Li Zishuan nodded and said, "Let him in." Then, he looked at the officers in front of him and said, "Everyone, go back and quickly set up the defense according to this Marquis's instructions." "Yes." The officers cupped their fists and bowed before leaving. "Teacher Wenji, how do you feel now? Do you feel any discomfort?" Yunshan Courtyard. During lunchtime, Li Tai brought the others from Dormitory 001 to Sun Simiao's courtyard to visit the seriously ill Li Gang. Sun Simiao went to the Tang Alliance Medical Center early in the morning because Li Gang's condition was under control. Hu Jing was enough to take care of the courtyard, so he didn't need to waste time here. Seeing the haggard Li Gang lying on the bed in the room, Li Tai couldn't help but feel sad and hurriedly asked, "Qing Ke, Baolin, Huaiyu, Zifen, you're here. Sit down." Li Gang's eyes were originally closed, but when he saw Li Tai and the others come in, he opened his eyes and said with relief. Chapter 1539. Miss Jing, how is Teacher Wenji? Cloud Mountain, Sun Simiao's courtyard. Hu Jing was brought into the room by Yuchi Baolin. After taking Li Gang's pulse for a while, she put down Li Gang's wrist with a heavy expression. At this time, Li Tai hurriedly asked. The others also looked nervously at Hu Meng. Hu Meng was silent for a moment before he finally said softly, "Teacher Wenji said too much to you guys just now. His body can't take it anymore and he has already fainted. When Master comes back at noon, he will give Teacher Wenji acupuncture. His condition should be better. Teacher Wenji is already very old, and last night he was injured. Those injuries may only be minor injuries to ordinary people and will be healed in 2 days, but for Teacher Wenji, they can take his life. This morning, I heard someone say that although Teacher Wenji was injured last night, he was still fearless in front of Wu Jie, and even righteously denounced Wu Jie as a barbarian martial artist. Teacher Wenji must have been holding on for the sake of the academy. However, he has consumed a great deal of his life potential. Elder's pulse and aura of life are getting weaker and weaker. What Master and I can do is to keep him alive and try our best to keep him alive for a few more days." "What?" Hearing this, Li Tai, Qin Huaiyu, and the others all opened their eyes in shock. Sun Zifen anxiously said, "Miss Jing, is there really no other way? As long as we can cure Teacher Wenji, we will find any rare herbs for you." Li Tai's eyes lit up and he quickly nodded, "Yes. Zifen is right, Miss Jing, if you need any herbs, just tell me. If I remember correctly, there should be a ginseng that is nearly 1,000 years old in the palace. Do you think it will be useful for Teacher Wenji?" 1,000-year-old ginseng? Who actually opened her small mouth in surprise, then she frowned and pondered for a moment, then said, Ginseng is a great supplement to the vitality. It can heal the meridians and stabilize the broken bones. In order to save people in danger, the effect of the 1,000-year-old ginseng is even stronger. Just a root can also save Teacher Wenji's life. This 1,000-year-old ginseng does have some use, but Teacher Wenji is already at the end of his life. Even if we have the elixir, I'm afraid there's nothing we can do to save him. Hearing this, Li Tai and the other three couldn't help but reveal a deep sadness on their faces. At this time, they couldn't help but think of the kind smile that Li Gang had revealed in the academy in the past, and last night when the academy was facing a great enemy, Li Gang, as a scholar, had stepped forward without hesitation to stand in front of all the students and let out a deafening cry. They would never forget this scene for the rest of their lives. Miss, please take care of Teacher Wenji. Even if it can only increase Teacher Wenji's life by a few days, I will go back to the palace and ask Father for the elixir. Li Tai's eyes were a little wet. He quickly turned his back and wiped his eyes with his sleeve. Then he turned around and solemnly saluted Hu. Hu hurriedly returned the salute and said, "Don't worry, Your Highness. I will take good care of Teacher Wenji." "Okay." Li Tai nodded, then waved to the other three and said, "Huayu, Bao Lin, Zifen, let's go. Don't disturb Teacher Wenji's rest." "Okay." The three of them nodded and said their goodbyes. Then, they followed Li Tai out of the room. "Your Majesty, His Highness Prince Wei requests an audience." At noon, Li Er took a nap in the Sweet Dew Hall. As soon as he woke up, a chamberlain came in and bowed. Li Er frowned and said in a deep voice, "Let him in." "Yes." The chamberlain cupped his hands and left. After a while, Li Tai walked in quickly. Just as he was about to salute, Li Er waved his hand and said, "No need to be so polite. Did Li Zishuan send you any news?" Subconsciously, Li Er thought that Li Tai had come to the palace because he had received a telegram about the front line. Li Tai was startled at first, then he shook his head and said, "Father, Yamacho has not sent back any new news. I am here today to ask Father for a medicinal herb." "Medicinal herb? What kind of herb?" Li Er was a little disappointed at first, but when he heard that Li Tai was here to ask for a medicinal herb, he couldn't help but be curious. Li Tai bowed deeply and said, "I heard that there is a ginseng that is almost 1,000 years old in the palace's warehouse. I beg Father to give me one of the roots of this ginseng." Li Er couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and asked in a deep voice, "What do you want 1,000 years old ginseng for?" There was indeed 1,000 years old ginseng in the palace, but Li Er had prepared it for himself. After all, ginseng of this age was really hard to come by. No matter how rich or powerful you were, you might not be able to get it. This thing could save one's life at a critical moment. For Li Er, it couldn't be measured by money. It was definitely a priceless treasure. Li Tai said with a sad face, "Father, Teacher Wenji is seriously ill and urgently needs 1,000 years old ginseng to save his life. I beg Father to give him the medicine." "What? Li Gang is seriously ill?" Li Er stood up in shock and asked, "I heard that Teacher Wenji only suffered some minor injuries last night. Why is he in such a critical condition now?" Li Tai cupped his hands and said, "Teacher Wenji is already old. Even if it is a minor injury, his body can't bear it. At this moment, he is already at the end of his life. Dr. Sun can only rely on acupuncture to save Teacher Wenji's life." Li Er was shocked. He stood with his hands behind his back and paced on the spot. After a while, he stood still and ordered loudly, "Zhao Song." "Yes, Father." Zhao Song, who had been standing quietly at the side like an invisible person, stood up and bowed to Li Er. Li Er said in a deep voice, "Cut half of the 1,000 years old ginseng that I have collected and send it to Yunshan immediately." "Yes, Father." Zhao Song was slightly shocked. However, this was a decision made by Li Er after careful consideration. He couldn't say much and could only agree with it. After that, Zhao Song slowly left the hall. Li Tai said excitedly, Thank you, father. Li Er closed his eyes and waved his hand. He sighed and said, Wenji is not only a teacher of Yanhuang College, but also a rare treasure of Tang Empire. I don't want him to leave this world. The hall fell into silence. After a while, Li Er asked again, Does Li Zixuan know about this? Li Tai cupped his hands and said, The Yamacho is currently setting up a defense line in the north to stop Wu Jie. I was afraid that if I told them about this, it would distract the Yamacho, so I didn't tell the Yamacho. Yes, you did the right thing. Hearing this, Li Er couldn't help but nod and praise. The most important thing right now is to keep Wu Jie here and snatch back the Academy's information. You go back and guard the telegraph. If Li Zixuan sends back any news, report it to this emperor immediately. Once I'm done with my work, I will personally go to Yunshan tomorrow to visit teacher Wenji. Li Tai bowed and said, Yes, father. I will take my leave now. Wait. Li Tai was about to leave when Li Er shouted again. Li Tai quickly stopped and heard Li Er say, Qin Ke, bring some guards with you when you go out in the future. Chang'an City has not been peaceful recently. These words had a deeper meaning. Hearing this, Li Tai couldn't help but be puzzled. Father, Chang'an City is under the Emperor's rule. How can it not be peaceful? Li Er looked at him and said, Where there is sunlight, there will be darkness. You can't go wrong by being careful. Li Tai didn't understand, but he still replied, Yes, father. Imperial teacher, the Tang Empire's Dragon Gate is not far ahead. After the Dragon Gate, we are only 600 li away from the grasslands. I wonder if the Tang Empire's Imperial Court's arrest warrant has been sent to Jiang Province. On the main road to the west of Jiang Province, a black-robed man and 4 other warriors were hurriedly riding their horses towards the north. It was Wu Jie's group. At this time, a warrior next to Wu Jie pointed at the impregnable pass in front of them and said. Wu Jie frowned and said, We will change horses along the way. Our speed will definitely be faster than the Tang Empire's messengers. The Dragon Gate is far from the Tang Empire's capital. Even if the Jiang Province's Imperial Court received the arrest warrant, they won't have enough time to dispatch troops. Of course, for safety's sake, we don't need to pay attention to the Tang Empire's army. We will just ride our horses and rush over. After rushing out of the Dragon Gate, we will continue to take the small path to avoid being discovered. Imperial teacher is wise. As soon as Wu Jie's voice fell, a group of licking dogs began to crazily lick his boot. The sun set in the west, and the shadows of the few people were elongated on the ground. After a while, the sun had completely set and the sky gradually became dark. Wait! Stop! Seeing the Dragon Gate getting closer and closer, Wu Jie suddenly reined in his horse and shouted to the people next to him. The other 4 people heard his voice and quickly began to rein in their horses. Finally, they stopped 5 steps in front of Wu Jie. Then, they hurriedly controlled their horses and returned to Wu Jie's side. Imperial teacher, why aren't we going? A warrior asked in bewilderment. Wu Jie looked at the Dragon Gate not far away and said with a dignified face, It's too quiet here. I'm afraid there's a trap. Be careful. You go ahead and explore the path. At the end of his words, Wu Jie pointed to a warrior next to him and said, Although he didn't believe that the Tang Empire's army would set up a defense so quickly, his intuition told him that there might be an ambush here. Yes, Imperial teacher. The man responded and continued to urge his warhorse to gallop towards the Dragon Gate. Who are you? Quickly dismount. It's so late, why did you come out? When the horses were still a few dozen feet away from the Dragon Gate, a general shouted. The warrior reined in his horse and stopped not far in front of the general. He then dismounted and cupped his hands. General, this humble one lives in Yangji village in the north of Jiang Province. I have been helping people transport goods in the south. A few days ago, I received a letter from my family saying that my mother is seriously ill. This humble one hurriedly rushed home to see my mother for the last time. I hope the general can make it convenient for me. Listening to this person's accent, it was actually very standard Chinese, and there was a little bit of an accent from Chang, and the general pondered for a moment and said, "Since it's urgent, for the sake of your filial piety, let's go." After saying that, he waved his hand and the gate of the Dragon Gate was immediately opened. The warrior quickly rode his horse and rushed to the gate. Chapter 1540. Wu Jie felt that there was an ambush in the peaceful Dragon Gate Pass, while Li Zixuan felt that there were Turks hiding in the forests around Dragon Gate Pass. Neither of them had any evidence, nor were they absolutely certain, they were just relying on their intuition. Intuition. The intuition of an expert was a very vague feeling, but many experts believed in this vague intuition. This was because they had escaped from death countless times and relied on this intuition. What's more, at Li Zixuan and Wu Jie's current level of cultivation, they often had a kind of vague premonition of danger. Although it couldn't be called foresight, it could only be said that their sense of danger was far sharper than ordinary people's. On the other side, Lantian County, Strange Interest Pavilion's new workshop. Have you found little Yuer? In the Datong Daily's editorial department, Ma Zhou asked a middle-aged scholar with an ugly expression. He didn't feel anything when he didn't see Li Yu at noon, but after not seeing her for an entire afternoon, he had a bad premonition. Thus, he quickly mobilized the entire editorial department to search for Li Yu. "Steward Ma, we've searched the entire workshop, but we haven't found Miss Li Yu. We've also searched Plum Village and Han Village, but we haven't found her." The middle-aged scholar was an editor in the editorial department, and he had a bitter expression as he spoke. Li Yu had a lively personality and was very popular in the editorial department. Her sudden disappearance had raised the morale of the entire editorial department. Everyone had been searching for her the entire afternoon, but after searching the entire workshop, Han Village, and Plum Village, they still couldn't find any trace of Li Yu. The middle-aged scholar was also feeling very uncomfortable. How is this possible? Since little Yuer came to Chang'an last year, she hasn't been to many places. Where could she have gone now? Search. Continue searching. Ma Zhou's face was gloomy as he punched the bookshelf beside him and said in a deep voice. Not to mention that Li Yu was brought into the Datong Daily editorial department by Li Zixuan, just by interacting with Li Yu for a year. Ma Zhou had already regarded Li Yu as his own little sister. Now that Li Yu had suddenly disappeared, he was the most anxious. Old Ma, Uncle Nyo from Plum Village said he saw Li Yu at noon. At this moment, Song Xiaoxi's panting voice came from outside the door. Then, Song Xiaoxi ran in, panting heavily. Ma Zhou was shocked when he heard this. He hurriedly stepped forward and asked excitedly, "Little Four, what did you say? Did someone from the Han Village see Li Yu? Where did you see it?" Huff huff. Song Xiaoxi took 2 deep breaths and replied, "Master Ma, Uncle Nyo said that when he came back from Chang'an at noon, he saw Miss Li Yu riding a horse and galloping on the cement road. She seemed to be in a hurry, so he didn't know where she was going." "What? Li Yu left?" Ma Zhou was shocked. Then, a look of worry flashed across his face. After a while, he sighed and said, "Where can this child go by herself?" The middle-aged scholar from earlier couldn't help but comfort him. "Steward Ma, Li Yu was able to come to Chang'an from Yuezhou alone. This means that she is very experienced. You don't have to worry too much. No matter where she goes, she will be fine." Ma Zhou waved his hand and said, "All right. Everyone, you can leave now. Thank you for your hard work today. I will go back to the academy and see if I can find any clues." "All right. We will take our leave now." Everyone in the room cupped their fists and said, Ma Zhou nodded and everyone dispersed. After a while, Ma Zhou also left the room with his hands behind his back and walked towards the door of the workshop. "What? Liu left Lantian County alone on a horse? When did this happen? Yunshan, Yanhuang College. After hearing Ma Zhou's words, Mo Huai was slightly surprised. The more Ma Zhou thought about it in the workshop, the more he felt that something was wrong. Liu had no relatives or friends, so there was no reason for her to go on a journey alone. Thinking back to the afternoon, he seemed to have heard Mo Huai mention that Liu had come to Yunshan. He went back to the academy to ask Mo Huai about it. At noon, a villager from the Han family village saw Liu galloping on a horse on the cement road from Yunshan to Chang'an. Mr. Mo, I heard you say that Liu came to the academy. What did she come for? Ma Zhou replied and then asked hurriedly. Mo Huai frowned for a moment before muttering. Liu claimed that Wu Jie recognized the jade bracelet on her wrist and likely knew the whereabouts of her parents, so she wanted to go north with the imperial court's army, but General Qin refused, so she left. Ma Zhou was shocked. Mr. Mo, you mean that Liu pleaded with General Qin but failed, so she went north alone to find Wu Jie? Mo Huai nodded, then shook his head. Not entirely. Miss Liu is smart and courageous. She should know that she can't find Wu Jie in the sea of people by herself. This old man thinks that she went north to find Yamacho and wanted to rely on the Yamacho's power to find Wu Jie. How does she know where Yamacho is now? Ma Zhou was puzzled. Mo Huai thought for a moment and guessed, maybe she got the news from Qin Kai. The two fell into silence. After some time, Mo Huai suddenly said, Mr. Ma, do you think that Liu's parents have something to do with the Turks? Ma Zhou was shocked when he heard this. He widened his eyes and said, Impossible. I heard little Yu talk about her background. Her parents are definitely Han people. Although all the signs showed that Liu's parents had something to do with the Turks, Ma Zhou didn't dare to think in that direction. If that was the case, he couldn't imagine how painful Liu would be. When Mo Huai heard this, he wanted to say something but hesitated. After a moment of hesitation, he said, Mr. Ma, don't forget. During the end of the Sui dynasty, the Central Plains was in chaos, and millions of Han people chose to join the Turks. Based on Miss Liu's age, she was born at a time when the world's heroes were rising. With Mo Huai unraveling the final layer of packaging, Ma Zhou could no longer retort and fell silent. According to Liu's story, she had been born in a time of great chaos. These countless coincidences forced Ma Zhou to believe that Liu's parents were related to the Turks, but he had no choice but to do so. At this moment, Ma Zhou couldn't help but feel sorry for Liu. If the truth was true, then Liu must have suffered a lot. Imperial teacher, other than a few wisps of smoke near Longmen Pass, there isn't any other smoke. It seems like there really isn't an ambush here. Night fell. At the foot of a hill in front of Longmen Pass, a warrior whispered to Wu Jie. Although they had rested for a while Wu Jie was observing the situation, they weren't feeling well because they were hungry. Originally, they had thought that after passing through the Dragon Gate, they would be able to borrow some food from the villagers, but who would have thought that Wu Jie would suddenly go crazy and refuse to come out, causing everyone to be both tired and hungry. Since that's the case, let's prepare to pass. Although the ominous premonition in Wu Jie's heart hadn't weakened in the slightest, he also knew that hiding here wasn't a solution. If they delayed any longer, they really wouldn't be able to leave the Great Tang, so a vicious light flashed in his eyes as he sternly ordered. Even if there was an ambush, Wu Jie was confident that he could break out of the encirclement and escape Longmen Pass. This was the confidence he had in his own strength. On Cloud Mountain, 3 Grandmasters and 2,000 Imperial Guards couldn't do anything to him, so Wu Jie didn't believe that he would be defeated in a small Longmen Pass. Yes, Imperial teacher. The 3 martial artists responded excitedly, then mounted their horses one after another, adjusting the direction of their horses. At this time, Wu Jie also jumped on his horse, and the 4 of them lined up in a row, intending to use brute force to rush out of the Dragon Gate. Because at this time, no matter what reason they had, the soldiers guarding the pass wouldn't let them out, so they wisely chose to break out of the pass. Charge! Seeing that everyone was ready, Wu Jie roared and took the lead, spurring his horse forward and gripping his mace. He charged towards Dragon Gate Pass. Charge! Seeing this, the other three martial artists quickly followed suit, raising their weapons and following Wu Jie's lead, charged forward. Dong dong dong! The rapid sound of horse hooves suddenly exploded on the official road, and the soldiers guarding Longmen Pass soon heard the abnormal movement here. They secretly sent someone to report to Li Zixuan, then shouted in a panic, "Who is it? This is the Dragon Gate Pass. Get off your horses quickly." But the four people on the opposite side didn't seem to hear their warning, and continued to rush toward them. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Seeing that their warning was useless, the guards at Longmen Pass began to shout at the top of their lungs. Suddenly, more than 20 soldiers with MO swords rushed out from the turrets on both sides and stood in a row in front of Longmen Pass. Seeing this, the three Turkic warriors couldn't help but think proudly, "There are only 20 Tang soldiers, how could there be an ambush? Imperial teacher is too suspicious today, isn't he?" Not only did they think so, but Wu Jie also thought so. Seeing that there were only 20 Tang soldiers lined up in front of Longmen Pass, he couldn't help but wonder if he was too nervous and thought there was an ambush. But at this moment it was useless to think about it. The most important thing now was to get rid of all the Tang soldiers in front of them and rush out of Longmen Pass as soon as possible. Therefore Wu Jie clenched the mace in his hand. He wanted to use this blood-stained mace to break a big hole in the fragile defense line of the Tang soldiers. Chapter 1541. Dugu Nine Swords. When Wu Jie raised his mace and swung it towards Li Zixuan's head, Li Zixuan subconsciously chose to use the Dugu Nine Swords broken spear style. It wasn't because the Taixien Nine Swords and Taiji Sword weren't strong, but because facing Wu Jie's mace, Li Zixuan felt that the best choice was still the Dugu Nine Swords broken spear style. Because the broken spear style was a natural counter to the mace. Compared to Dugu Exhilarating, Li Zixuan's cultivation was higher, his true qi was richer, and his understanding of martial arts was deeper. Therefore, in the blink of an eye, the Dugu Nine Swords broken spear style had been condensed. The wind-chasing sword and the mace collided in the air. Although the broken spear style had a natural suppressive effect on the mace, the gap between the martial scholar intermediate stage and martial grandmaster stage was too great. Li Zixuan suddenly felt a huge force pass through his wind-chasing sword, and what was strange was that in addition to the huge force, Li Zixuan also felt an electric current pass through his sword, causing his hand to feel numb. Regarding Wu Jie's true qi faintly containing the power of lightning, Li Tai had mentioned it before in the telegram, but after facing it for real, Li Zixuan was still surprised by Wu Jie's ability. He quickly tried to use his true qi to neutralize the huge force and the electric current passing through his sword hilt, because if his arm was electrocuted, it was likely that it would become completely numb and he wouldn't even be able to hold his sword. Seeing that his first attack had failed, Wu Jie quickly changed his stance, changing from a vertical slash to a horizontal sweep, intending to send Li Zixuan flying with his mace. However, the Dugu Nine Swords broken spear style's power lay here. Based on the opponent's instantaneous movements, the user could quickly predict the opponent's next move and make the best response, achieving the goal of defeating the enemy first. Although the Dugu Nine Swords wasn't Li Zixuan's signature move, with Li Zixuan's superb talent in martial arts, Li Zixuan's Dugu Nine Swords was much better than Dugu Exhilarating's. Therefore, just as Wu Jie was about to change from a slash to a sweep, Li Zixuan had already made a response. Li Zixuan's long sword moved slightly to the left. His chasing wind-chasing sword drew a perfect arc in the air. Li's powerful broken spear style's sword, spear style's mace's broken spear style was instantly neutralized by Zi's. TSSSS, this 9 swords, riding wind sword, S's S sword instantly swords sword 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 first sword sword riding the wind riding sword, sword 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 wind sword. Sword sword, S sword sword sword, S. The situation had changed too quickly. The surrounding soldiers had just seen Li Zishuan being suppressed by Wu Jie, but in the next moment, Li Zishuan had launched a counterattack. A youth who had just turned 20 years old had actually launched a counterattack against a martial grandmaster who had been famous for a long time. What was wrong with this world? Everyone couldn't help but have such a question in their hearts. In fact, it wasn't just the soldiers who had doubts in their hearts. Wu Jie was even more confused. At the moment when he fought with Li Zishuan, he felt that he was not fighting with one person, but 3 masters at the Grand Master middle stage at the same time. Li Zishuan had used 3 different sword intents at almost the same time, and each sword intent had been so pure. What's more, the 3 sword intents were seamlessly linked together. Wu Jie felt like he was facing 3 people who were using 3 different sword intents. In fact, this was mainly due to Li Zishuan's 9 Taixin swords, Taiji sword, and Dugu 9 swords. Using the Dugu 9 swords to counter the enemy's first move, he could predict the enemy's next move, then use the Taiji sword to resolve the enemy's attack, and finally use the 9 Taixin swords to switch from defense to offense. With these 3 sword intents, Li Zishuan was far more powerful than an ordinary martial grandmaster. To some extent, his strength was comparable to a peak martial grandmaster. Good. Facing Li Zishuan's attack, Wu Jie didn't show the slightest fear. Laughing loudly, he patted his horse's back with one hand, and with the force of the recoil, his whole body soared into the sky. Thunder Overlord Mace! Wu Jie shouted as he flew through the air, holding the mace in his hand as he spun rapidly. Lightning flashed across the mace's surface, and from a distance, it looked like a spinning wheel as it flew towards Li Zishuan. Facing such a strange attack from Wu Jie, the surrounding 10,000 soldiers were scared out of their wits, because in their eyes, how could a mortal control lightning? At this moment, Wu Jie was like a god of war descending from the heavens, insufferably arrogant and invincible. Although their hearts were all on Li Zishuan's side, none of them believed that Li Zishuan could block Wu Jie's strange attack. Kung! Pung! The wind-chasing sword and the wolf-tooth mace clashed. The wind-chasing sword let out an extremely loud sword cry, which cut through the entire night sky. Immediately after, the two collided with a loud bang. The violent Zhen Qi that scattered in all directions not only swept up the sand and stones on the ground, but also shook all the nearby soldiers back by more than 10 steps. Qi. Wu Jie's reaction was very fast, and his true Qi was extremely vigorous. Li Zishuan was sent flying by Wu Jie's attack, and in order to stabilize his body, he quickly stabbed the wind-chasing sword into the ground. After sliding back 3 steps, Li Zishuan finally stabilized his body. At the same time, the lightning energy several times stronger than before entered his meridians through his palms, causing his breathing to become unstable and causing him to suffer a cultivation deviation on the spot. Gap. This was the gap between a martial scholar middle stage and a martial grandmaster. Not just a little bit, but a huge chasm. Old monster. In Li Zishuan's mind, these 3 words couldn't help but appear. The Wu Jie in front of him was indeed worthy of the title Old Monster, because he was stronger than all the masters Li Zishuan had encountered before. Worthy of being the disciple of spiritual master Ling Su. With this talent, in another 10 years, the whole world will be under your control. Wu Jie didn't pursue the victory. Instead, he stood in place in his black robe, looking at Li Zishuan and using his hoarse voice to praise him. Humph! Don't pretend to be so righteous here. The dignified Tujue imperial teacher actually took advantage of this marquee absence to sneak into the academy and commit theft. Even if you win today, you will be despised by the world. Li Zishuan clenched his teeth, forcibly calming the chaotic true qi in his body, then stood up and looked at Wu Jie, mocking him without fear. When Li Zixuan left Lantian County and brought the Sky Pheasant Brigade north to help the disaster-stricken areas clear out the locusts, he thought that when he wasn't in Lantian County, there would be Jianghu thieves who would take advantage of the Academy's weak defense to cause trouble, so he left all his guards behind. But he never imagined that the dignified Tujue Imperial teacher, a martial grandmaster-level super expert, would personally sneak into Yanhuang College, effortlessly destroy all the Academy's defenses, and steal most of the Academy's confidential information. This made Li Zixuan's heart burn with a nameless fire, and now that he finally had the chance to scold Wu Jie, how could he let it go? Hearing this, Wu Jie couldn't help but fall silent, because in this matter, he was indeed opportunistic, taking advantage of other people's difficulties, and in any case, couldn't be considered honorable. After a moment of silence, Wu Jie finally opened his mouth. "You're right. This time, this imperial teacher sneaked into Yanhuang College because Yunshan, which originally had 3 martial grandmasters, only has 1 martial grandmaster left. But this imperial teacher isn't afraid of you 3. He just doesn't want any trouble. Taking advantage of other people's difficulties was taking advantage of other people's difficulties, and Wu Jie didn't try to hide it for the sake of face, instead openly admitting it. From this point alone, this old man could be seen as a straightforward person." Hearing this, Li Zixuan couldn't help but look at Wu Jie in surprise. He hadn't expected Wu Jie to admit it so easily, making him unable to say the words he had prepared just now. "Humph. It's not that this Marquis looks down on you Turks, but the Academy's confidential books, even if you brought them back to the Turks, no one would be able to understand them. Moreover, your actions are tantamount to starting a war between the Great Tang and the Turks. Is Xieli ready to start a war with the Great Tang? Hand over the books you're carrying today, and this Marquis can spare your life." Inadvertently, Li Zixuan saw the bag on Wu Jie's back, and his face couldn't help but turn cold as he spoke in a deep voice. "Ha ha. Little baby, you've got some big words. If this imperial teacher wants to leave today, you can't stop him." Hearing Li Zixuan's words, Wu Jie couldn't help but laugh loudly. Li Zixuan snorted and said, "This Marquis's cultivation is indeed lower than yours, but today, there are tens of thousands of troops lying in ambush at Longnan Pass. Do you think you can still escape? Tens of thousands of troops? Ha ha. Little baby, you're too confident. Once this imperial teacher finishes you off, what can these tens of thousands of troops do to me?" Wu Jie sneered, a look of arrogance on his face. Although his tone was arrogant, he wasn't wrong in the slightest. Li Zixuan was the strongest in this army, and if he was defeated, no one would be able to pin down Wu Jie, and the main force wouldn't have the time to effectively encircle and suppress Wu Jie. He could rely on his lightness skills to escape from the army at any time. Saying so, Wu Jie raised his mace and leapt into the air again. The mace flashed with cold lightning as it once again smashed towards Li Zixuan's head. Last night, when he was dealing with Dugu Xian, Dugu Feiying, and Mo Huai, Wu Jie's favorite move was this. 9 Taishin swords, second form, graceful grace. Li Zixuan let out a low roar, instantly activating the second form of the 9 Taishin swords. Like a giant dragon soaring through the sky, Li Zixuan shot towards Wu Jie at full speed. At the same time, in the northern part of the Great Tang Empire, Yanmen Pass, Su Tingde led the 20,000 Bing province soldiers and the imperial edict that Li Er had given to Li Zixuan. They rushed all the way to Yanmen Pass before nightfall and took the initiative to take on the task of guarding Yanmen Pass. After half a day of rushing, the soldiers and horses were already tired. After Su Tingde arranged for night patrols, the rest of the soldiers returned to their tents to sleep. But what they didn't know was that a life-and-death crisis was approaching them. Closer and closer. "General, the Tang army that arrived in the evening has already set up camp. Now is the time when their men and horses are tired. Should we send out the army now and directly take down the Tang army at Yanmen Pass? In the grass outside Yanmen Pass, a dense group of Turkic soldiers were hidden, each of them accompanied by a warhorse. But at this time, all the warhorses were kneeling in the grass. This way, even if someone passed by, they wouldn't notice the army hidden in the grass. Chapter 1542. Su Tingda's 20,000 soldiers had only reached Yanmen Pass in the evening. No, to be more precise, it was 10,000 soldiers. This was because Su Tingda had left 5,000 men behind at Madu Pass and Yongha Pass. Now, he only had 10,000 men left. Moreover, after half a day of rapid marching, the soldiers were all extremely tired, and many of them were already asleep. Su Tingda felt that the Turks had chosen this time to attack, and his 10,000 men were completely incapable of stopping them. The most frightening thing was that he was holding the imperial decree that Li Erfa had given to Li Zishuan. However, he had only just arrived in the evening. Originally, he wanted to rest and reorganize for the night before transferring troops to the nearby prefectures. Who would have thought that the Tujue would launch an attack on Yanmen Pass so quickly? Go. Immediately send messengers to Yunzhou, Daizhou, and Yuzhou to ask for reinforcements. Tell them that Yanmen Pass might fall. Su Tingda's expression changed several times. At this time, he could also faintly hear the chaotic sound of horse hooves not far away. He took a deep breath and barely managed to stabilize his mind. He looked at the soldier and said word by word. "Commandant, what about you? The Turks have tens of thousands of wolf cavalry. We're definitely no match for them. Commandant, why don't you withdraw first?" The soldier hesitated for a few moments before bowing to Su Tingda. "Bastard! Do you know that a commanding general fleeing before battle is a capital offense? And besides, this general is the commandant of the Great Tang's Bingzhou subjugation prefecture. Even if I die, this general will die with my brothers. A general of the Great Tang can only stand and die. I will never cower before the battle. Hurry and send men to the nearby prefectures to ask for reinforcements." Su Tingda angrily bellowed. He was afraid of death, and he had not lived long enough. He still wanted to become a higher official, obtain more glory and wealth, and enjoy a more comfortable life. But at this moment, as a Great Tang soldier and the commander of this army, he could not sneak away alone. After all, Su Tingda had experienced the chaos of the Sui dynasty and the chaos of the rebellion against the emperor. He did not want his family to once more live a life of wandering about and destitute. The reason was that simple, nothing more. "Commandant, I want to stay behind and fight against the Turks with Commandant. Commandant, please send someone else to ask for reinforcements." The soldier hesitated for a moment, then clasped his fists and said stubbornly. Su Tingda was touched, but his face turned cold. He said coldly, "Zheng Hong, you dare to disobey a military order?" The soldier trembled and hurriedly said, "This general doesn't dare." Su Tingda snorted and shouted, "Then why aren't you sending the order?" After being yelled at by Su Tingda, the soldier was a little scared. After a moment of hesitation, he bowed and said, "This general obeys." Looking at Su Tingda, the soldier reluctantly retreated from the tent. Sigh. "Zheng Hong, oh Zheng Hong, you can't blame me. Who asked you to be the only son of your Zheng family?" Looking at Zheng Hong's back as he left, Su Tingda muttered to himself, "Kill." At this moment, a burst of battle cries came from the pass. Su Tingda's expression gradually turned cold. He stood up, took the long sword hanging on the wall, and walked straight out of the tent. "Commandant, the Turkic army is already attacking. Our brothers won't be able to hold on much longer. You should leave quickly." Su Tingda had just walked out of the big tent when a soldier hurriedly ran over and said, "How many enemies are there? Who's the leader?" Su Tingda frowned and asked. The soldier cupped his fists and said, There are about 50,000 enemies, and the leader is the Turkic Khan, Ashina Shur. Commandant, Ashina Shur brought all the Turkic elite. We definitely won't be able to hold on. Please retreat as soon as possible. It's him? Hearing that, Su Tingda was stunned at first. Then, he said coldly, we have to hold on even if we can't. Whoever dares to flee tonight will be killed without mercy. Yanmen Pass terrain is narrow. Even if we use a pile of orders, we have to completely block the pass. Quickly beat the drum and summon all the soldiers to kill the enemy with me. I've already sent people to the nearby prefectures to ask for help. We only need to hold on for 2 hours, and there will definitely be reinforcements coming to save us. Yes, Commandant. Seeing that Su Tingda was so confident, a fighting spirit rose in the soldier's heart. He swallowed his saliva and cupped his fist. Dong, dong, dong. A moment later, a series of drumbeats sounded from the south of Yanmen Pass. As time passed, the drumbeats became louder and more frequent. At this time, Su Tingda had already climbed up the tower of Yanmen Pass. Although the Turkic people were not good at sieges, Yanmen Pass was far from being a city. This was because Yanmen Pass was situated on the official road in the middle. The horizontal width of the city walls was only a few hundred feet. As such, the number of soldiers that could be accommodated on the city walls was extremely limited. When the Turkic soldiers got close to the city gates, they abandoned their horses and directly carried a thick tree trunk and slammed it into the city gates of Yanmen Pass. Naturally, Su Tingda would not let the Turkic people crash into the city gates of Yanmen Pass just like that. He quickly shouted, "Release the arrows! Release the arrows!" Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Hundreds of arrows were released in an instant, shooting at the Turkic soldiers charging at the city gates. After a round of arrows, dozens of Turkic soldiers fell to the ground in an instant. However, while the Tang soldiers on the city walls were reloading their arrows, the Turkic soldiers behind began to charge forward fearlessly again. Hurry and release the arrows. Seeing this, Su Tingda hurriedly urged. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Another volley of arrows was fired, but the results were somewhat worse this time. Only 30-some Turkic soldiers fell to the ground, but the Turkic soldiers behind them were still charging at the city gates like a tide. Su Tingda inwardly frowned. First of all, the Turkic soldiers outnumbered the Tang soldiers by 4 to 5 times. At this rate, they probably wouldn't be able to kill all the Turks even if they spent the entire night. Moreover, the light at night was poor, so the accuracy of the archers was definitely not as good as during the day. Many of the arrows would miss. Most importantly, in order to maintain the speed of the march, Su Tingda's army had not brought many arrows, only 10-some thousand. Based on the current accuracy, it would be good enough if they could kill 1,000 Turkic soldiers. But the Turks had 50,000 soldiers. How was he going to fight the Turks with this? Rolling logs and stones? There were some remaining rolling logs and stones on the walls of Yanmen Pass, but there were not many of them, and they would not be able to withstand the assault of 40 to 50,000 Turkic soldiers. Should they use sabers or swords? But if they did so, their advantage as defenders would be gone, and in the end, they would still be unable to avoid defeat. Just as Su Tingda was deep in thought, the sound of something tearing through the air suddenly rang out. Su Tingda focused his eyes and saw a metal arrowhead shining with a cold light in front of him. It was easy to dodge a spear in the open, but difficult to defend against a hidden arrow. Su Tingda felt that he couldn't dodge this hidden arrow. "Commandant, watch out!" At this critical moment, a soldier at Su Tingda's side leaped up and tackled Su Tingda to the ground. The arrow brushed past Su Tingda's cheek and struck the soldier's shoulder. Squelch! This was the sound of an arrow piercing flesh. The arrow was heavy and powerful, and it did not stop at the soldier's shoulder. More than half of the arrow had pierced through the soldier's body. "Protect the commandant!" Someone shouted, and 4 or 5 soldiers immediately surrounded Su Tingda. "Ha! What a pity! If we could kill the Tang commander directly, we might be able to take down Yanmen Pass effortlessly. In the Turkic army, Ashina Shir put away his longbow and lamented regretfully. Clearly, that arrow just now was shot by him. General, there's no need to be regretful. The fact that the Tang army could reach Yanmen Pass so quickly shows that they didn't bring many arrows. These arrows can at most be shot 10 more times. When they run out of arrows, we can break through the gate and enter. A soldier beside Ashina Shir could not help but laugh. Ha! That's right. When the Tang army runs out of arrows, we will enter the pass directly. Then, we will welcome the state preceptor. Ashina Shir laughed heartily. Taiji sword techniques 38th style. Phoenix wings spread. Taiji sword techniques 28th style. Shooting stars chase the moon. 9 strategies beyond the swords. Broken spear style. Taiji sword techniques 18th style. Black dragon swings its tail. Taiji sword techniques 20th style. Lotus leaves whirlwind. 9 Taishian swords 3rd style. Snow treading, leaving no trace in the snow. Taiji sword techniques 34th style. Moon in the ocean. Taiji sword techniques 50th style. Immortal guides the way. Over at Longmen Pass, the battle between Li Zishuan and Wu Jie had already reached its climax. After exchanging blows with Wu Jie, Li Zishuan was very clear about the huge gap between himself and a martial grandmaster. This gap was not something that could be made up with exquisite moves. Therefore, Li Zishuan wisely gave up on attacking, and began to fight a defensive battle from the start. With the 9 solitary swords advantage, the unparalleled defense of the Taiji sword technique, and the extreme speed of the 9 Taishian swords, Li Zishuan's figure flashed through the battlefield, not letting Wu Jie even touch the corner of his clothes. After a dozen exchanges, he actually did not suffer any external injuries. Although there were no external injuries, of course there were internal injuries. In addition to Wu Jie's powerful true qi, what annoyed Li Zishuan the most was the strange power of lightning that Wu Jie sent out with his mace. If Yang Kai were to use his true qi to resist and neutralize this thing, it would be a huge waste of his true qi. In this situation, his true qi was his life, and his true qi was definitely not as vigorous as Wu Jie's, so he had to use it sparingly. However, if he completely ignored it, his arm would soon become numb from the electricity, affecting his reaction speed, and if he wasn't careful, he might even be seriously injured by Wu Jie. Therefore, although Li Zishuan had withstood Wu Jie's attacks for a dozen exchanges, this impressive achievement was not something he could be proud of, because his situation was not good. Facing Wu Jie's seemingly endless true qi, Li Zishuan's true qi was running out. Chapter 1543. Commander, you should leave. Yanmen Pass can't be defended. On Yanmen Pass, the Tang army was about to run out of arrows. Seeing this, a soldier came to Su Tingda's side and urged him anxiously. Su Tingda was unmoved and said coldly, "I would rather die than retreat." After saying that, he turned to the soldiers on the city gate tower and shouted, "Generals, listen to my order. Follow me to open the gates and fight to the death with the Turkic army. Behind us are our parents, wives, and children. Tonight we would rather die than retreat." Su Tingda had been forced to give up the advantage of terrain and open the gates to meet the Turks. Their arrows were about to run out, and without any long-range attacks, the Turkic soldiers would be able to easily break through the gates. Rather than hastily engaging in battle, it was better to open the gates now and gather all the soldiers to engage the Turks in a battle of life and death. Rather die than retreat. Rather die than retreat. Su Tingda's words influenced the Tang army near Yanmen Pass, and they all shouted. A solemn and stirring atmosphere suddenly pervaded the air. Reporting. General, the Tang army has taken the initiative to open the gates and want to fight us outside Yanmen Pass. At the center of the Turkic army, a Turkic soldier ran over and bowed to Ashina Shirchu. The Tang army actually dares to come out? Ashina Shirchu raised his eyebrows in surprise. Then, his face turned cold as he said, "Pass down my order. The left, middle, and right armies move out together and take down Yanmen Pass as quickly as possible." "Yes." The soldier cupped his fists and turned to leave. Woo woo. Not long after, the desolate sound of a bugle horn could be heard in the open space outside Yanmen Pass. This was the bugle horn for the Turkic army to launch an all-out attack. Thus, countless Turkic soldiers mounted their horses and brandished their scimitars as they galloped toward the Tang army that had just exited the city and gotten into formation. "Listen up. Tonight I, Su Tingda, will advance and retreat with my brothers. I swear to defend Yanmen Pass to the death." Below the city wall, Su Tingda pulled out the sword at his waist and pointed at the Turkic army. "Defend Yanmen Pass to the death. Defend Yanmen Pass to the death." As soon as Su Tingda finished speaking, the 10,000 Tang soldiers roared in unison. "Follow me and kill." Su Tingda roared as he led the charge into the Turkic army. Seeing this, the Tang army at the back quickly urged their horses to catch up. A great battle had officially begun. Su Tingda had come from a poor family, and he had relied entirely on his own abilities to reach his current position. Thus, there was no need to doubt his personal strength. Under his command, the Tang army was able to break through the heart of the Turkic army like a hot knife through butter. But the disadvantage of this was obvious. They would be easily surrounded by the Turkic army. After all, the Turkic army outnumbered them by 4 to 5 times. "Humph! Get out of the way! Wait for me to meet him!" Seeing that Su Tingda was unstoppable in the army, taking down several dozen Turkic soldiers in just a few moments, Ashina Shirchu finally couldn't stand it any longer and roared. Hearing this, the Turkic soldiers around Su Tingda immediately scattered, creating an empty space. Su Tingda's eyes focused as he looked at Ashina Shirchu approaching on horseback. After a moment's hesitation, he raised his right palm to the Tang soldiers behind him and said, "All of you withdraw as well." A general duel. In the blink of an eye, a large-scale group battle had transformed into a one-on-one duel between generals. In ancient war dramas like the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, it was common to see the commanders of two sides fighting one-on-one, and the one with superior martial strength would emerge victorious. Many people would be confused. Was there really such a phenomenon in history of generals fighting generals? In truth, this sort of situation had happened before, but it was not a scene from the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, but there were many restrictions. First, generals fighting generals had already appeared in the spring and autumn period. At that time, it was called Zhishur, and after the Han Dynasty, it was called Duan General. Both had the same meaning. In the middle of the spring and autumn period, there were records of the Great War between the Jin and Chu states. At that time, King Zhuang of Chu led an army to attack Handan and met the Jin general Zhao Qing. Zhao Qing was unable to resist and abandoned his carriage to escape. In the end, Zhao Qing threw away his clothes and armor, as the armor would affect his speed. This was the first time in history that a general fought a general. This was because King Zhuang of Chu's physical strength was exceptional, and he was considered one of the strongest amongst all the emperors. During the Warring States period, such a phenomenon rarely occurred. At that time, the 7 kingdoms had already been perfected, and they relied on large-scale armies to fight. During the Han Dynasty, when Hua Tsubing and Li Guang were repelling the Xiongnu, they also fought with enemy generals. However, this was a battle between the soldiers of the Central Plains and the nomadic enemies. It was somewhat similar to the current situation between Su Tingda and Ashina Shirchu. During the War of Chu and Han, Xiang Yu and Liu Bang fought, and such a phenomenon also occurred. However, when Liu Bang sent his own general to challenge the overlord, he was defeated by Xiang Yu in 3 moves. The end of the Eastern Han Dynasty was also the Three Kingdoms period. It was recorded that Sun Tzu and Taisher Si fought at Shinting Ridge, and Sun Tzu accepted Taisher Si as a fierce general. There was also a duel between Ma Chao and Chao Wei. Other than that, there were no other records in the Three Kingdoms period. Generally speaking, there were situations where generals fought before a battle, but it was not as common as in ancient dramas. After all, the generals of ancient times were all well versed in military books, and they understood the principle of a good man destroys schemes. Thus, the purpose of these generals in battle was to win. Unless they were at the end of their rope and wanted to fight to the death, they would not engage in a direct confrontation with the enemy generals. And now, to Su Tingda, he was indeed at the end of his rope. Although he had killed many Turkic soldiers, his subordinates had also suffered many casualties. If this continued, in less than an hour, the 10,000 Tang soldiers would be defeated by the Turkic army. You are called Su Tingda? Good. If this general wins against you today, you will have all the Tang soldiers retreat. If you win against this general will immediately withdraw. How about it? Ashina Shirchu stared at Su Tingda and spoke in a booming voice. Humph. Even if you win against this Su, the army behind this Su will not retreat even half a step tonight. The soldiers of the Great Tang can only die standing, not kneel and drag out an ignoble existence. Su Tingda said with a cold expression. Hearing this, Ashina Shirchu's face sank. He had proposed a duel with Su Tingda partly because he wanted to reduce the number of casualties on his side, and partly because he wanted to save time. After all, Wu Jie was still waiting for them. Humph. Since that's the case, this general will kill you first. Let's see if these Tang soldiers will do as you say and hold their ground. Ashina Shirchu coldly snorted. He knocked an arrow on his bow and shot 3 arrows at Su Tingda's forehead, neck and heart. General, be careful. Many soldiers in the Tang army cried out in alarm. Su Tingda was lying on his back. The 3 arrows missed his body and brushed past the bridge of his nose. But on the other side, Ashina Shirchu took advantage of the moment when Su Tingda was dodging the arrows to rush forward and slash at Su Tingda's neck with a slender sword. This person was actually proficient in both long-range and close combat. Moreover, the speed of these 2 attacks was as fast as lightning, making it impossible to guard against. For a moment, Su Tingda was caught off guard. He hurriedly brandished his sword to block Ashina Shirchu's killing blow. However, Ashina Shirchu was a grandmaster. The speed of his sword was astonishingly fast. How could Su Tingda's hasty sword block it? Kurng! Pung! First, there was the sound of metal clashing. Then, Su Tingda was sent flying by the powerful internal energy attached to Ashina Shirchu's sword and fell to the ground. In just 1 round, the chief general of the Tang army was knocked off his horse. The surrounding soldiers were shocked and rushed to Su Tingda like a swarm of bees, trying to protect him. But someone was faster than them. After Ashina Shirchu knocked Su Tingda back, he dashed forward and stabbed his sword at Su Tingda's throat. Su Tingda was alarmed as he hurriedly raised his sword to block in front of him. Ashina Shi's sword stabbed into Su Tingda's sword. Su Tingda took advantage of the situation to retreat. With this force, he finally stood up from the ground. Under the illumination of the torches, the sword flashed and the 2 of them fought again. However, although Su Tingda was not weak, he was still not a grandmaster. Ashina Shirchu was not only at a higher level than him, but he also fought in close combat, took 3 steps back, and drew his bow in one breath. With such a combination of long-range and close-range attacks, Su Tingda could not withstand it. After a few rounds, it was obvious that he was going to lose. Charge! Protect Commandant Su! When the surrounding soldiers saw this, they understood that Su Tingda wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Someone shouted, and immediately, more than 10,000 soldiers rushed up to protect Su Tingda. Humph! It's time to end this. When Ashina Shirchu saw that the Tang army was rushing towards him, he raised his sword and slashed at Su Tingda. Su Tingda swung his sword to block, and then Ashina Shirchu used his left palm to hit Su Tingda's chest. Bam! Su Tingda was like a kite with a broken string after receiving Ashina Shirchu's palm strike that was filled with true chi. He fell heavily to the ground. Commandant! Commandant! The 10,000 soldiers were shocked. They hurried forward to help Su Tingda up, kill, flatten Yenmen Pass. Ashina Shirchu guessed that Su Tingda was not going to live. He waved his hand and ordered the Turkic soldiers beside him. Charge! Bam! 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 Hearing the order, the 50,000 Turkic soldiers immediately charged at the Tang army. What was worse was that the Tang army's commander-in-chief had been severely injured by Ashina Shirchu, and the 10,000 soldiers were in a desperate situation without their commander-in-chief. Chapter 1544. Pooh! Li Zishuan was heavily injured by Wu Jie and fell to the ground. Just now, Wu Jie's berserk true chi had been transmitted into his body through his sword, crazily wreaking havoc in his meridians, causing Li Zishuan, who was already in a weakened state, to the point where he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. The blood was also mixed with blood, clearly showing that Li Zishuan's internal organs had also been injured. But this wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that when Li Zishuan's sword had struck Wu Jie's chaotic thunder body had transmitted a considerable amount of lightning energy to Li Zishuan, causing Li Zishuan to feel as if he had been struck by lightning. His entire body was numb, and he couldn't even move a finger. This was because he didn't have any true chi in his body to neutralize this lightning. Pung pung pung. On the battlefield, seeing Li Zishuan heavily injured by Wu Jie, the 10,000 soldiers from Bing province charged towards Wu Jie without fear of death. But at this moment, Wu Jie was abnormally strong. None of the Tang army soldiers who got close to him could withstand a single blow from him. All of them were sent flying by his mace. In an instant, the Tang army's formation was in chaos. Seeing this, Wu Jie very wisely chose to fight while retreating. Because of the battle with Li Zishuan just now, although Li Zishuan hadn't been able to injure him, he had paid a heavy price. At this moment, he only had less than 40% of his true chi left. If he continued to fight with the Tang army, Wu Jie believed that there would only be one end for him, and that was death from exhaustion. As for the heavily injured Li Zishuan, Wu Jie didn't think of taking advantage of the situation to kill him, because he was very clear on his goal, which was to escape back to the Turks with the confidential information of Yanhuang College. As a result, under his brute force, the surrounding Tang army was quickly torn apart. Wu Jie resisted the attacks of the Tang army while relying on his lightness kung fu to gradually close in on the northern opening. It was worth mentioning that Wu Jie's lightness kung fu was also quite good. Without a master like Li Zishuan holding him back, he was like a bolt of lightning in the night, able to go wherever he wanted. Seeing Wu Jie trying to escape the encirclement, the soldiers became even crazier, rushing towards Wu Jie without any regard for their own lives. But now that they had lost their formation, and with no one to command them, they were like a swarm of bees, running around randomly, unable to pose the slightest threat to Wu Jie, who was constantly dodging left and right. Quick! Formation! Stop Wu Jie! Jiang Provincial Governor Hong Wenxing saw Li Zhan sitting motionless on the ground healing wounds, completely unable to pay attention to the battle situation, so he quickly stood and shouted to the soldiers. Formation, formation, formation! Quickly, formation, formation! The nearby soldiers quickly followed Hong Wenxing's orders, but the soldiers further away couldn't hear Hong Wenxing's orders, so the effect of Hong Wenxing's shout was extremely limited. At most, it would only be able to delay Wu Jie for a short while. At this time, Li Zishuan, who was meditating and healing, suddenly experienced a mysterious change in his body. The spirit chi in his body suddenly came to life. Last year, when the bearded man wreaked havoc in Cloud Mountain, Li Zixuan and Mo Huai had fought together. In that battle, Li Zixuan had relied on his understanding of another mysterious gas between heaven and earth, spirit qi, to directly advance to the middle stage of the martial scholar realm. Since then, Li Zixuan had felt that his body had changed, especially the true qi in his body, which seemed to have been mixed with something else. At that time, Li Zixuan had called this spirit qi. Heaven and earth had spirits, and all living things were born. Li Zixuan didn't know what spirit qi was, or what kind of elements it was made of, but he was sure that it wasn't oxygen, but he was very sure that his meridians could directly absorb a special kind of qi from the natural world. Without any experience in this area, he could only attribute it to spirit qi. But strangely, since the last time when he had broken through to the middle stage of the martial scholar realm and crazily absorbed the spirit qi, the special spirit qi in his body had completely quieted down. Usually, not only could he not feel its existence, he basically couldn't use it. Just like just now, when his true qi was exhausted, the spirit qi didn't move at all. At this moment, Li Zixuan, who was numb from the powerful electric current, suddenly felt the spirit qi in his body begin to stir. Li Zixuan could clearly feel the spirit qi in the air around him crazily rushing into his body, and the remaining electric current in his body began to quickly converge towards his dantian. Gradually, the numbness in his limbs was lifted and he could move again. The electric current that Wu Jie had transmitted to him was actually completely swallowed up by the spirit qi in his dantian. Not only that, at this moment Li Zixuan's true qi, which had originally dried up, was rapidly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was like a small dried-up pond. Originally, it could only rely on manpower to pour buckets of water into it, but now, with the addition of more than a dozen water pumps, the dried-up pond instantly became dry and the water level began to rise. Half a quarter of an hour. In just half a quarter of an hour, Li Zixuan's true qi had been restored to 60%. Although he hadn't recovered to his peak state, for the current situation, 60% was just barely enough, because Wu Jie was about to escape from the encirclement. 9 Taishian swords, 7th style, phantom, all that the heart sees is an illusion. Li Zixuan raised his wind-chasing sword and directly soared into the sky. In the sky, 8 more Li Zixuan appeared and rushed towards Wu Jie from different directions. Marquis is fine? Great. Marquis' strength has been restored. Let's see how the Turkic imperial teacher can act arrogantly now. Seeing Li Zixuan soar into the air and once again join the battle, the great Tang soldiers cheered loudly, greatly encouraged. What? Impossible! Feeling the familiar murderous intent behind him, Wu Jie hurriedly turned around, and when he saw that it really was Li Zixuan, his eyes widened in disbelief. In the last exchange, Wu Jie clearly felt that Li Zixuan's true qi had been exhausted, but now that Li Zixuan was flying towards him with his sword, how could he explain this? Could it be that in this short period of time, Li Zixuan had not only dissolved his thunder and lightning, but had also recovered most of the real qi that he had consumed in his body? How was that possible? In Wu Jie's view, this obviously didn't conform to common sense, even subverting his understanding of the world of martial arts. But now that Li Zixuan was coming at him with his wind-chasing sword, Wu Jie had to find a way to block him. Li Zixuan was using the 7th style of the 9 Taishian swords alone, not all 7 like before, so the power was naturally much lower. However, the current Wu Jie was far weaker than before. Therefore, Li Zixuan's 1 sword, no, 8 sword strikes, because there were 8 phantoms, Wu Jie had to use all his strength to deal with it. Thunder Overlord Mace! Wu Jie shouted, and in the air, he spun rapidly with his mace in hand. Lightning flashed on the mace, and from a distance, it looked like a spinning wheel as it collided with the Li Zixuan, coming from all directions. He wanted to break through them one by one, and not directly block them with his body like before. Ding ding ding! Every time Wu Jie's mace collided with the wind-chasing sword held by one of the phantoms, a metallic clanging sound rang out. Relying on his movement speed secret art, Wu Jie quickly broke through the phantoms one by one, and the number of Li Zixuan's phantoms in the sky gradually decreased. Everything looked the same as before, but when there was only one Li Zixuan left, a sudden change occurred. 9 Taishan swords, 8th style, returned to origin. 10,000 swords returned to origin. When Li Zixuan's sword strikes were about to be broken by Wu Jie, his momentum suddenly changed. First, he changed direction in the air and retreated 2 meters, then he waved his hands, and all the swords in the hands of the nearby soldiers were sucked towards him. The 8th style of the 9 Taishan swords quickly flashed through his mind, and he gathered all the true qi in his body, finally managing to display the 8th style of the 9 Taishan swords. In fact, it was completely impossible to perform the 8th move of the 9 Taishan swords in the Supreme Power middle stage, but Li Zixuan had already stepped into the threshold of the Supreme Power late stage, so he could finally perform the 8th move. More than 20 swords floated in front of Li Zixuan, and Li Zixuan's long hair fluttered without any wind. Drawing a circle with his hands, he used all the true qi in his body to shake off the 20 swords, and quickly sent them flying towards Wu Jie. Seeing this, Wu Jie was shocked and hurriedly waved his mace to defend himself. With a series of ding-ding-ding sounds, almost all of the swords were deflected by Wu Jie's mace, but this was only almost. There was still a fish that slipped through the net. Qi. One of the swords very luckily dodged Wu Jie's all-around attack, and with a qi sound, cut open the black package on Wu Jie's back. Suddenly, the white papers and books scattered all over the ground, and all the confidential information in the package fell to the ground. Wu Jie wanted to pick up the papers and books on the ground, but Li Zixuan didn't give him the chance. With a loud shout, Li Zixuan used the Tai Chi sword's Azure Dragon out at sea on Wu Jie's face. When the rest of the soldiers saw this, they knew that now was their best chance to kill Wu Jie, so without waiting for Li Zixuan's orders, they formed the Mo sword formation and rushed towards Wu Jie's position. Wu Jie dodged Li Zixuan's Azure Dragon out at sea, and then looked at the Yen Wang College's confidential information that was scattered all over the ground. He gritted his teeth, knowing that it was impossible for him to take all these things away today, because the Tang army had already formed the formation and was about to surround him again. Great Tang Marquis Yong, you really are different from other cultivators. Today, this master has underestimated you. Wu Jie looked deeply at Li Zixuan, then his feet moved slightly, and in the blink of an eye, he retreated several dozen feet away. He was actually preparing to escape. Li Zixuan wanted to give chase, but suddenly felt a sense of exhaustion in his body. His physical strength had been completely overdrawn. Besides, if a martial grandmaster wanted to escape, with his current strength, he wouldn't be able to catch him no matter what. Fortunately, the Academy's information was recovered. This was the last thought in Li Zixuan's mind before he fainted. Yanmen Pass. The battle here had already entered a white-hot stage, but the Tang army's defeat was becoming more and more obvious. The number of soldiers left on the battlefield was decreasing, and the Tang army's commander, Su Tingda, had already been seriously injured and was in a coma. Directly rush out, don't care about these remnants, rescue the imperial teacher is more important. Seeing that only a few of the 10,000 soldiers Su Tingda brought with him were left, and they were no longer a threat to him, Ashina Shirchu decisively gave the order. He didn't lead his troops to Great Tang to break through the pass, but to rescue the imperial teacher. As for how many Tang soldiers they defeated, it was completely meaningless to him. Yes, General. The messenger immediately passed down Ashina Shi-er's order. Immediately, the Turkic soldiers pushed their horses to the limit and charged straight for the city gate. The Tang army had rushed for several hundred li during the day, and not only were the men tired, the horses were also tired. Facing the Turkic army at full speed, How could they resist? Not long after, a torrent of soldiers passed through Yanmen Pass and headed south. Chapter 1545. Quick! Let's go to Longmen County and get a doctor. Dragon Gate Pass, inside the tower. Li Zishuan had already been helped to his bed. Jiang Province's provincial governor Hong Wenxing hurriedly ordered the soldiers beside him. This time, Li Zishuan had borrowed troops from Bing Province. In order to ensure the speed of the march, there was no doctor accompanying him. Hong Wenxing could only send people to Longmen County to find a doctor. Yes. As soon as he finished speaking, a soldier immediately cupped his fists and replied. After the soldier left, Hong Wenxing turned to the soldiers in the room and said, "You guys stay here and take care of Marquis. This official will return to Zhengping Province to mobilize troops to pursue Wu Jie." Zhengping Province was the administrative center of Jiang Province. The provincial governor's office and Jiang Province's Zhechong House's camp were both located there. Hong Wenxing only brought a few dozen guards with him to Dragon Gate Pass and didn't bring many troops. Dragon Gate Pass was filled with Li Zishuan's troops from Bing Province. Hong Wenxing didn't have the authority to mobilize them, so he could only go back and mobilize more troops. Wu Jie is alone, so his speed of escape must be very fast. The military situation is urgent. I'm afraid it's too late for Senior Hong to return to Zhengping Province to mobilize troops. This general, Fang Gongting, is willing to lead the troops here to follow Senior Hong north to pursue Wu Jie and avenge Marquis. After Hong Wenxing finished speaking, a young general stepped out and cupped his fist. During the day, Su Tingde took 20,000 soldiers to Ma Do Pass, Yonghe Pass, and Yanmen Pass to set up defenses. At the same time, he left behind a few capable generals for Li Zishuan, and this Fang Gongting was one of them. Hearing this, Hong Wenxing's eyes lit up. He nodded and praised, "Good. Then I'll have to trouble Fang Gongting to lead 8,000 soldiers to pursue Wu Jie with this official." Just now, during the battle between Li Zishuan and Wu Jie, because Hong Wenxing wasn't good at martial arts, he couldn't help much from the sidelines, which made him feel quite apologetic. What's more, Li Zishuan had been seriously injured by Wu Jie at the Dragon Gate, so if Hong Wenxing, as the Jiang Province's provincial governor, didn't do anything, he would definitely be punished by Li Er. Therefore, whether it was for public or private reasons, Hong Wenxing had no choice but to lead troops to pursue Wu Jie. Not long after, Hong Wenxing and Fang Gongting led the 8,000 prefecture soldiers out of the Longmen Pass and headed north. The rest of them stayed at Longmen Pass to protect Li Zishuan. At the same time, the news that Yanmen Pass had been broken quickly began to spread. The governors of Yunzhou, Shuo, Yuzhou, and Daizhou, the 4 prefectures of the Hedong Circuit near the northern border, began to move. Overnight, they mobilized soldiers from their local prefectures to Madu Pass and Yonghe Pass, hoping to stop the Turkic army from advancing further south. After all, 2 years ago, Xieli Khan had taken advantage of the change in power in the Great Tang Empire to send an army of 100,000 soldiers to attack the Great Tang from Yunzhou. They had been unstoppable, first attacking Jing Province, and then advancing all the way to the capital of the Great Tang, Chang'an. Many people could still vividly remember that scene. Who could guarantee that the 50,000 Turkic soldiers wouldn't run to the gates of Chang and then show off their might to Li Er? If that really happened, all the officials of the 4 prefectures of the Hedong Circuit would probably be demoted by Li Er. Thus, when they learned that Ashina Shi had led 50,000 Turkic wolf cavalry into the pass, the governors of these prefectures instantly lost their composure. They hastily dispatched soldiers to pursue and trap the Turkic army in the Hedong Circuit. The soldiers of these 4 prefectures added together numbered at least 70 to 80,000, but they had come from different directions. If they really did run into the Turkic army, they would still suffer a significant loss. Hiya! On the official road north of Longmen Pass, 2 men in black were madly galloping. In this era, there were no headlights or street lamps, so traveling at night was very dangerous. Fortunately, there was still some moonlight tonight, and the official road was relatively wide. Thus, even though these two were running so fast, they didn't fall into the ditches on either side of the road. State teacher, we'll reach Horse Do Pass soon. Since that Li Zixuan was able to set up an ambush at Longmen Pass, there might also be a large number of Tang soldiers at Horse Do Pass. Are we still going to force our way through? The man who was following behind said. There's no need. Our men should be arriving soon. The black-robed man riding at the front said in a hoarse voice. This man was Wu Jie, who had escaped from Longmen Pass. The other man was an experimental subject that Wu Jie had released at the beginning to see if there was an ambush at Longmen Pass. Wu Jie hadn't expected that the experimental subject would successfully escape while the other 3 Turkic warriors were left behind in the Tang army camp at Longmen Pass. The warrior in black couldn't help but be alarmed by these words. He couldn't help but whisper, "Our men? Did the Khan send people to the Tang Empire to pick us up?" Wu Jie didn't respond. It wasn't that he didn't hear it, but that he wasn't in the mood to answer this question. Right now, his mind was full of Li Zixuan. To be more precise, he was thinking about Li Zixuan's last counterattack. During the time he escaped from Longmen Pass, Wu Jie had already deduced countless times in his mind, but the result of each deduction indicated that after Li Zixuan was knocked down by him, it was impossible for Li Zixuan to prepare a second round of attacks in such a short time. This was because Li Zixuan was only at Grand Master middle stage, so it was impossible for his true qi to be so vigorous. The only explanation was that Li Zixuan had recovered 50 to 60% of his true qi during the short time he was entangled by the Tang army. But how was that possible? This kind of recovery speed was something that even Wu Jie himself couldn't achieve, so how could Li Zixuan, who was only at Grand Master middle stage, do it? The more he thought about it, the more he couldn't understand, so Wu Jie had no choice but to give up. But what made him feel regretful was that the books and confidential information he had stolen from Yanhuang College with great difficulty had been cut open by Li Zixuan's returning to origin. This meant that his mission to infiltrate the Tang Empire had completely failed. This made Wu Jie very unwilling to accept. 10 days ago, Han Lijing had seen several Turkic warriors sneaking into the Tang Empire on Mount Baishan, and Wu Jie was among them. At the end of June, a locust plague had broken out in the Guangzhong region of the Tang Empire. Xieli Khan saw this as an opportunity, so he sent Wu Jie to infiltrate the Tang Empire to see if there were any good opportunities. After entering the Tang Empire, Wu Jie had originally planned to go straight to Chang'an City, but along the way, he had heard many people talking about how Li Zixuan had led the Sky Rooster Brigade to eliminate locusts in the northern provinces. In fact, the Turks had many spies in the Tang Empire, so Wu Jie naturally knew about Li Zixuan, a rising star in the Tang Empire. So when he heard that Li Zixuan had gone north to eliminate locusts, he immediately had an idea to weaken the Tang Empire's strength and strengthen the Turks' national strength. That was to sneak into Yanhuang College, steal all the engineering books and information, and bring them back to the Turks to slowly study. Wu Jie had been patiently waiting for a good opportunity to sneak into the college, and he hadn't expected that it would really happen. On the 3rd day after he arrived at Yunshan, the bearded man bid farewell to Li Gang, Wang Ji, and the other Yanhuang College teachers and left Yunshan, saying that he was going out to sea. In just a few days, Yunshan, which had originally been guarded by 3 grandmasters, only had Mo Huai as its sole grandmaster. Wu Jie believed that it was time to sneak into Yanhuang College. But in order to ensure that nothing went wrong, he had patiently observed the surroundings of Yunshan for several days, and after confirming that there was no danger, he had chosen to sneak into the college last night to steal the books. But he hadn't expected that after stealing the books, on the way back to the Turks, he would encounter Li Zishuan's ambush. It had to be known that he and the 4 Turkic warriors he had brought with him were all riding 2 horses, and they had been rushing through the night. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that their speed was much faster than the speed of the messengers from Chang unto the northern provinces and counties. Looking at it this way, at first, he had schemed against Li Zishuan, but later on Li Zishuan had schemed against him, and in the end, the 2 of them had fought to a draw. Thinking of this, Wu Jie's eyes couldn't help but become dignified. In his heart, he thought that Li Zishuan would definitely become the greatest enemy of the Turks in the future. Kill. Sure enough, by the time Wu Jie arrived at Horse Dipper Pass, the 2 sides had already engaged in a fierce battle. Ashina Shir was truly worthy of being a Turkic general. After breaking through Yanmen Pass, he had broken through Yonghe Pass as quickly as possible, and now he had arrived at Horse Dipper Pass before Wu Jie. Hiya! Hearing the battle cries in front of him, Wu Jie understood that reinforcements had arrived, and he quickly urged his horse forward. General Ashina, quickly give the order to retreat to the grasslands. The Tang army should be here soon. Arriving in front of Ashina Shir, Wu Jie ordered in a hoarse voice. Ashina Shir nodded subconsciously, but then he suddenly remembered something and hurriedly asked, Imperial Teacher, I heard in the letter that you stole a lot of books from Yanhuang College. Where are those books now? Wu Jie's face sank, and he turned around and said, Li Zishuan set up an ambush at Dragon Gate Pass, and those books were taken back by him. What? Ashina Shir was shocked when he heard this, and he asked in disbelief, why would Li Zishuan set up an ambush at Dragon Gate Pass? Shouldn't he be fighting locusts in the north of the great Tang Empire? Wu Jie sullenly said, how did this king know about this? Losing the books was a very shameful matter for Wu Jie, and now he was being questioned by Ashina Shir, so how could he be happy? He was the imperial teacher of the Turks, second only to one person. Hearing the unfriendly tone in Wu Jie's voice, Ashina Shir couldn't help but be startled, and then he wiped his nose and asked as calmly as possible, Dare I ask, Imperial Teacher, how many people did Li Zishuan set up at Dragon Gate Pass? Wu Jie lightly said, about 10,000 people. Li Zishuan was seriously injured by this king, and the great Tang army should also have 700 to 800 people injured. Only 10,000 people? And Li Zishuan is seriously injured? Ashina Shir's eyes lit up when he heard this, and after hesitating for a moment, he said, Imperial Teacher, why don't we give Li Zishuan a surprise attack and take back those books from Li Zishuan? Chapter 1546. Something happened? We gave him the authority to mobilize the soldiers of the northern 32 provinces. What could possibly happen to him? Within the Suidu Hall, Li Er couldn't help but speak out after hearing Li Tai's words that were filled with worry. In Li Er's view, no matter how powerful Wu Jie was, how could he threaten Li Zishuan, who had so many soldiers under his command? A martial grandmaster was still a human, not a god. Li Tai was slightly relieved to hear this, but then his brow furrowed again. Imperial Father, Wu Jie suddenly sneaking into the Great Tang, was it Khan Xieli who ordered him to do so? And could Khan Xieli still have a backup plan? For example, he might have hidden a large number of soldiers on the northern border of the Great Tang. Once Wu Jie succeeds, the Turkic army will enter the pass to receive him? Li Er's expression suddenly turned grim. After a moment of silence, he nodded. Qinke, your analysis is correct. This situation is extremely likely. It should be that Li Zishuan has made many divine weapons for the Great Tang in the past year. After Xieli heard about it, he sent Wu Jie, a martial grandmaster, to sneak into Cloud Mountain to steal. This way, Xieli must have a backup plan. I really didn't expect that Xieli, a fierce and ruthless character, would send someone to do such a shady business. Li Er couldn't help but slam the table and stand up. Li Tai stood up and clasped his hands. Imperial Father, if this is really the case, then Yamacho's situation is not good. This afternoon, Your Eminence and the other generals calculated that Wu Jie would most likely arrive at Longmen Pass in the evening. Mountain Chieftain is an intelligent man and should have been able to guess Wu Jie's route, but time is tight. Even if he can transfer soldiers from Bing Province, it would be impossible for him to gather more than 50,000 soldiers in such a short amount of time. If Wu Jie and the Turkic soldiers lying in ambush in the Great Tang's territory work together, Mountain Chieftain leading a lone army at Longmen Pass will not be able to stop Wu Jie from fleeing north. The little fatty who had wanted to compete with Li Zixuan back then was now racking his brains and thinking about Li Zixuan's safety. It had to be said that Li Zixuan had a special kind of charisma. Charisma? How could Li Er not understand what Li Tai was talking about? Li Zixuan was the most promising talent of the Great Tang's younger generation. He didn't want anything to happen to Li Zixuan, but what else could he do? At this moment, Li Zixuan was several hundred li away from the capital. If something were to happen, it would have already happened. Thinking of this, Li Er couldn't help but walk back and forth in front of the hall with his hands behind his back. Beep beep beep. At this moment, the telegraph on the small square table beside Li Tai suddenly beeped. Swish. Swish. Both father and son turned their gazes to the telegraph at the same time. Soon, Li Tai came back to his senses. He quickly picked up a pen and paper and began to record. A moment later, the telegraph stopped beeping. Li Er quickly asked, "How is it? Is it from Li Zixuan?" "Father, it's not a telegram from Yamacho." Unexpectedly, Li Tai shook his head. Seeing the doubt in Li Er's eyes, he quickly explained, "It's from Meng Wenhao." As he spoke, Li Tai had already sent out a string of codes to indicate that he was beside the telegraph. "Is it news about Shu Bao, Jijie, and the others?" Li Er's eyes narrowed as he asked in a deep voice. Li Tai nodded and said, "It should be." Beep 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 beep. As soon as he finished speaking, the telegraph beeped again. This time, the telegraph beeped for a long time. Li Er looked on anxiously from the side. The main reason was that he couldn't understand this non-human language, so he felt that time passed very slowly. After some time, the telegraph finally stopped beeping. Li Er knew that Li Tai was going to start translating the codes, so he didn't say anything to disturb him. However, as Li Tai compared the translated codes to the codebook, his expression gradually became serious. Seeing this, Li Er's heart sank. He quickly asked, "Qin-Ke, is there a change in the situation at the front line?" Li Tai took the paper with the translated report and stood up. With a solemn expression, he said, "Imperial Father, General Qin's army has already arrived at Puzhou. Just a moment ago, the scouts at the front sent news that the Turkic army of 50,000 is attacking Yanmen Pass. Yanmen Pass has been broken, and the armies of Yunzhou, Daizhou, Yuzhou, and Shuozhou have all moved to stop the Turkic army from continuing south." "What? The Turkic army of 50,000 broke through Yanmen Pass?" Li Er's expression changed. He rushed in front of Li Tai and asked, "Then what about Li Zixuan? Did he stop Wu Jie and take back the information about Yanwang College?" Li Tai handed over the paper with both hands and said, replying to father, "Wenhao said that the situation at Yanmen Pass is still unknown. General Qin and his troops are marching through the night towards Yanmen Pass. They are estimated to arrive at Yanmen Pass in the middle of the night." When the provincial governors of the 4 provinces in the north found out that Yanmen Pass had been breached, they dispatched many messengers riding fast horses down south, telling the various provincial governments to make preparations to guard against the Tujue. Therefore, although the army led by Qin Qiong, Cheng Yaojin, and Yuqi Jingdo were still in Puzhou, the scouts they sent out were able to receive the news that Yanmen Pass had been breached in the north. "Good. Immediately send a message to Shu Bao. No matter what, we can't let the Turkic army receive Wu Jie and take the books out of Great Tang." Li Er's face was as calm as water as he nodded and ordered. Li Er wasn't worried about an army of 50,000 Turks entering the Great Tang. After 2 years of recuperation, the Great Tang could be considered a powerful army. It was impossible for a mere 100,000 Turks to reach Chang, and in the 9th year of Wuda to happen again. His main concern was that after receiving Wu Jie, the Turks would flee back to the steppe with the Academy's secrets. If that really happened, the Academy's secrets would truly be lost. Yes, Father. Li Tai replied and quickly sat down beside the telegraph machine to continue sending messages. A few hundred li away from Chang and Baoding County in Puzhou, both sides of the official road were filled with soldiers. They were taking a temporary rest. General Qin, His Majesty wants us to rush to Longmen Pass. We can't let the Turkic army meet up with Wu Jie and take the books out of Great Tang. Meng Wenhao took out a piece of paper and cupped his hands in front of Qin Xiong and Yu Qigong. Qin Xiong couldn't help but nod. His Majesty can also see that Wu Jie will definitely pass through Longmen Pass. Since that's the case, let's continue our march. We must reach Longmen Pass within 4 hours. Not only were Li Er, Li Jing, and the others able to predict that Wu Jie might encounter Li Zishuan at Dragon Gate Pass, Qin Xiong, Qing Yaojin, Yu Qijingde, and the others, who had experienced hundreds of battles, could also predict this. Therefore, the route of their army was very clear. After leaving Chang and city, they went straight to Dragon Gate Pass, basically taking no detours. That's right. Military intelligence is like fire, and time waits for no one. Come, pass on my order. All soldiers of the 3 armies are to immediately mount and continue marching. Yu Qijingde shouted loudly, instructing. Yes. A few moments later, the 10,000 elite soldiers mounted once more and galloped forward under Qin Xiong's lead. This time, Qin Xiong was leading all light cavalry, and their specialty was their mobility and speed. In addition, Meng Wenhao had followed the army to Zhengzhou and was quite proficient in riding. Otherwise, he would have suffered a lot on this expedition. Marquis's internal organs were injured, and then he forced himself to circulate his energy. This is damaging his vitality. This old man doesn't know martial arts, so I can only give Marquis a calming and nourishing medicine. As for when Marquis will wake up, that's hard to say. Longmen Pass inside the turret. 2 soldiers finally kidnapped a famous doctor from Longmen County to treat Li Zishuan. After the old doctor checked Li Zishuan's pulse, he couldn't help but shake his head with a heavy expression. What do you mean? Dr. Liu, aren't you the best doctor in Longmen County? Why can't you treat Marquis? One of the soldiers who brought the old doctor to Longmen Pass asked anxiously. The other 3 soldiers in the room also looked at Dr. Liu with red eyes. The white-bearded old man suddenly looked troubled. He sighed and said, I don't know martial arts, and I'm only good at treating external injuries. However, Marquis has internal injuries, and I can't do anything about it. Please find someone else. I'll give Marquis a prescription. Perhaps it can slightly reduce Marquis's injury. After that, he ignored the angry stares of the people in the room and started writing the prescription. No. You have to save Marquis. Marquis is a good person. Longmen County was also affected by the locust plague. If it weren't for His Highness, Prince of Shu, who led Marquis's Sky Pheasant Brigade to eliminate the locust plague, Longmen County would definitely be in famine this year. If you don't cure Marquis, how can you live with your conscience? A soldier with a big beard stood out and said unwillingly to the old man. In fact, not only did Li Ku's team eliminate the locust plague in Longmen County, but many counties in Bing Province also received the favor of Li Ku and Li Zishuan. Therefore, when they saw that Li Zishuan was unconscious, many soldiers who followed Li Zishuan to Longmen Pass were secretly anxious. They wished they could take his place. This was the will of the people. This was what it meant to be repaid with kindness. When the old man heard that, he couldn't help but pause. He slowly straightened his body and said with a pained expression, How can I not know that Marquis is a good person? How can I not know that the locust plague in Longman County was eliminated because of Marquis' Sky Pheasant Brigade? It's just that I really can't do anything. If possible, I'm willing to exchange my life for Marquis. But I can't. If you want Marquis to wake up as soon as possible, you have to find an inner force expert who is proficient in the art of healing. According to what I know, I'm afraid only Dr. Sun is qualified to do it. Dr. Sun? Dr. Sun should still be in Chang'an. How can he make it in time? The soldier with the big beard couldn't help but ask. Lieutenant Liu, this is bad. A large number of cavalrymen with torches have been spotted 20 miles to the north. They are rushing towards Longmen Pass. At this moment, a soldier ran in quickly and bowed to the bearded soldier with cupped fist. It turned out that this guy was a lieutenant of the Bing Province barrack. What? A large number of cavalrymen are approaching Longmen Pass? Are they soldiers from other places? The bearded lieutenant's eyes widened. His heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly changed his expression. I can't see clearly which place they are from, but their marching speed is very fast. It won't be long before they reach Longmen Pass. The soldier cupped his fists and replied. The bearded lieutenant's face darkened. He said, "Let's go. Follow me to the city tower to take a look." Then, he remembered the white-haired old man beside him. He said, "Dr. Liu, you don't have to worry. After you finish writing the prescription, someone will send you back to the county. Even if they are the enemy, they won't be able to hurt you." The old man shook his head and said calmly, "Lieutenant Liu, you can go. I've lived to this age. What's there to be afraid of?" The bearded lieutenant couldn't help but nod. He secretly thought that this old man was a good person. He must pay more for the consultation fee later. At that moment, the bearded lieutenant led 2 mansion soldiers out of the door. Chapter 1547. If the other party is really the Turkic army, how can the 1,000 soldiers here be their opponent? It's no secret that the Turkic state preceptor covets Marquis' knowledge. If he sees that Marquis is unconscious, not only will he take away all the books in Yanhuang College, he might even capture Marquis and bring him back to the Turkic Empire. At that time, Marquis will still not be able to escape death. After listening to Dr. Liu's words, the bearded lieutenant's eyes widened and he said anxiously. When Dr. Liu heard this, he suddenly had a difficult expression. "Lieutenant Liu, Marquis' current situation is definitely not able to withstand the bumpy journey. This place is at least a dozen miles away from Longmen County. If you send Marquis back to the county, if you go too fast, Marquis might directly lose his life on the way. If you go too slow, the Turkic army will most likely catch up with Marquis. The result is the same. This old man has said everything. As for how to decide, I ask Lieutenant Liu to think thrice before you act." The bearded lieutenant opened his mouth and was so anxious that he almost cursed. In this situation, if he stayed, he would definitely die. If he escaped, he would also definitely die. It wasn't an exaggeration to call it a hopeless situation. What choice did you ask him to make? What thrice? Even if he thought 100 times, he still couldn't do it. In addition, not only did Li Zishuan have a high position and power, but he was also deeply loved by the people of the Tang Empire. When it came to the life and death of Li Zishuan, the bearded lieutenant really didn't dare to take the risk. Just think about it. If Li Zishuan died because of his wrong decision, not only would Li Er and the people of the world not forgive him, he wouldn't be able to get past himself. Therefore, at this time, the bearded lieutenant was hesitant. Speaking of which, if he had to risk his own life, he wouldn't hesitate to do it. He wasn't afraid of death. "Lieutenant, this subordinate has a plan." Just when the bearded lieutenant was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan, the soldier who came to report suddenly said, "Oh? What plan? Say it quickly. What time is it now?" Bai Qi, you still want to keep me in suspense? When the bearded lieutenant heard this, he resisted the urge to slap the back of the latter's head. Lieutenant, I just remembered. The soldier shrunk his neck and quickly said, Lieutenant, there is a cellar under the Longmen Pass. We can hide Marquis in the cellar and send someone to look after him. This way, even if we all die in battle, the Turkic army might not be able to find Marquis. Cellar? There was a cellar under the Dragon Gate? Why didn't I know about it? The bearded lieutenant said in surprise. They were all soldiers from Bing Province's Zhechong House. They had never been to Longmen Pass before, so they naturally didn't know the specific situation here. The soldier named Bai Qi replied, Lieutenant, my cousin used to be stationed at Longmen Pass. Of course, I know the situation here. We can hide Marquis in the cellar. This way, the Turkic army won't find him and Marquis won't be injured. Furthermore, Provincial Governor Hong and Fang Kanjun led people to chase after Wu Jie. If those torches really belonged to the Turkic army, Kanjun and the others would definitely see them. They might even be rushing over to Longmen Pass right now. As long as we can hold on until Kanjun and the others return, we have hope of holding on until reinforcements from other places arrive. Hearing this, the bearded lieutenant couldn't help but nod and say, Good. We will immediately move Marquis to the cellar. Remember, you are not allowed to mention this to anyone else. Violators will be punished according to military law. This matter concerned Li Zishuan's life, so the bearded lieutenant had to be careful. He felt that the fewer people who knew about Li Zishuan's hiding place, the better. It wasn't that he didn't trust the other soldiers outside, but he was worried that some people would be threatened by the Turkic army and be forced to reveal Li Zishuan's whereabouts. Hiding Marquis in the cellar isn't a bad idea. This old man is willing to stay in the cellar and take care of Marquis. At this time, Dr. Liu said. Previously, he had planned to write 2 prescriptions for Li Zishuan to ease his injuries, but with the army at the border, even if he wrote the prescriptions, he wouldn't have time to get the medicine. Instead, he might as well stay by Li Zishuan's side. If anything happened, he would be able to treat him immediately. The bearded lieutenant couldn't help but look at Dr. Liu in surprise. After hesitating for a moment, he said, Dr. Liu, Liu Xianda, won't hide it from you. Tonight, Longmen Pass is likely to be flooded with blood. Are you sure you want to stay? Dr. Liu waved his hand and said, How could this old man not know this? But Marquis' life is in danger. If this old man abandons him, not only will I be a doctor in vain, I will also be a human. Anyway, this old man is already so old. If the Turkic army wants to kill me, then kill me. If this old man can save Marquis' life, this old man will have no regrets. When Lieutenant Liu Xianda heard this, he couldn't help but be slightly moved. He solemnly bowed to Dr. Liu and said, Dr. Liu is benevolent and righteous. If this old man is lucky enough to survive this battle, he will definitely repay today's kindness in the future. Dr. Liu saved Li Zishuan, which was a disguised redemption for him. Of course, he was grateful from the bottom of his heart. Lieutenant Liu is too polite. This is what I should do, Dr. Liu said as he cupped his hands in return. Liu Xianda nodded and no longer talked nonsense. Several people carefully helped Li Zishuan up from the bed and prepared to send him to the cellar. Lieutenant, these books from Yanhuang College, should we also move them to the cellar? Sergeant Li Zishuan followed behind them. At this time, he glanced at the pile of books on the square table in the room. They were the books that Li Zishuan had taken from Wu Jie. He quickly asked. Liu Xianda's figure paused and said with a serious expression, Move. Of course we have to move them. These precious books from Yanhuang College must not be taken away by the Turks. In fact, Liu Xianda wanted to burn all these books because burning them was the safest way. However, without Li Zishuan's permission, he didn't have the courage to burn these books. Yes, Lieutenant. Lieutenant, the Turks are here. After about 15 minutes, Lu Xianda stood on the tower again. The torches in the north were less than 3 miles away from Longmen Pass. Lu Xianda's eyes narrowed. He turned around and looked at the more than 1,000 soldiers behind him and shouted, "Everyone, listen to me. Tonight we will defend Longmen Pass with our lives. We are not fighting alone. As long as we can hold on for a few minutes, our reinforcements will arrive. At that time, everyone will have a share of the credit for defending Longmen Pass." 1,000 soldiers against at least 30 to 40,000 soldiers would definitely be weaker. In order to stabilize the soldiers' morale, Lu Xianda could only say so. In fact, he didn't even know if there would be reinforcements. "Yes, we will defend Longmen Pass with our lives." The soldiers didn't know this. When they heard Lu Xianda's solemn vow, they all responded with vigor. "Lieutenant, look. Are those Adjunct Fang's men?" Bai Qi pointed to the northeast and shouted. Lu Xianda quickly turned around and took a closer look. He saw a black torrent about a mile away from the Dragon Gate. It was rushing toward the Dragon Gate at a high speed. They were too far away and this group of people didn't have any torches. Therefore, they didn't notice that there was an army in front of the Torch Army. "It's Adjunct Fang. It must be them." Adjunct Fang and Provincial Governor Hong are very familiar with this official road. They can march with a little moonlight, but the Turks are definitely not like them. Therefore, this group of people must be Adjunct Fang and his men. Lu Xianda said excitedly. Bang bang bang. As the army continued to approach, it didn't take long for some sharp-eyed soldiers to see the appearances of some of the people in the army under the faint moonlight. Someone cheered, "Adjunct Fang! It's Adjunct Fang! Adjunct Fang is back! Longmen Pass is saved! Open the city gate!" Lu Xianda also saw it clearly at this time and ordered decisively. Yes. Soon, 2 soldiers bowed and ran down the city tower to open the city gate. Bang bang bang. After a while, the army finally arrived at Longmen Pass. Seeing the city gate open, they galloped into the pass without hesitation. "Quick! Close the city gate!" Chapter 1548. Arrows shot out, logs and stones tumbled down, and the area in front of Longmen Pass quickly turned into a scene of carnage. Hundreds and thousands of Turkic soldiers fell at the foot of the gate tower. The sounds of charging and miserable howls mixed together, and the originally quiet night sky was no longer peaceful. In a village near Longmen Pass, the villagers who were sleeping soundly were woken up by the loud battle cries. They went out and saw flames in the direction of Longmen Pass. They panicked. "There's a battle! There's a battle at Longmen Pass! Are the Turks here? Quick, mother of the children, quickly take the children out and escape to the county." "Master, are you crazy? Longmen County's gate is already closed. What's the point of us escaping there?" "Then let's escape to the mountains. Otherwise, when the Turks enter the village, they'll definitely capture us and send us to the grassland to work as laborers." "You Dazhuang, what are you waiting for? There's a battle at Longmen Pass. Grab your weapons and go help out at Longmen Pass." Li Jing, you want to go to Longmen Pass? What if the Turks are attacking Longmen Pass?" "Turks? If they're Turks, we have to go. Do you know who the general guarding Longmen Pass is? It's Marquis Yong'an. Who was the one who saved our village? It's Marquis' Sky Rooster Brigade. If you don't help Marquis today, I'll see if you can live with your conscience." "What? Marquis is at Longmen Pass? How is that possible? Why not?" "Rengoe went hunting in the mountains today and met Marquis on the way. Marquis was leading an army to enter Longmen Pass. Now that someone is attacking Longmen Pass, Marquis must be in danger. If you're a man, grab your weapons and follow me to help Marquis. As for the women and children, run to Yamacho to hide." "Sigh. Isn't that Rengoe? Rengoe, where are you going? Wait for us to go together." Xiu Village. This was Xuerengui's hometown, Longmen County Xiu Village in Jiang Province. Xuerengui had long heard the battle cries from afar. At this moment, he had already carried his bow, feather arrows, and modeo on his back and walked quickly towards the village entrance. Hearing someone calling him, he stopped in his tracks and turned to look at the burly man. He replied, "Gao Lijing, I'm going to Longmen Pass to take a look. Tell the villagers to bring along hunting bows if they have one. It's the best thing to use to defend the city. Besides, Uncle Yu, with Marquis around, the Longmen Pass won't be breached. The army from the county will be here soon. You don't have to rush Aunt Yu and the rest into the mountains. It's not safe in the mountains at this time of the night." After saying that, Xuerengui did not care about what the two of them thought. He immediately turned around and rushed towards the Dragon Gate. "Sai. Rengui. Just you wait, be careful." The big man surnamed Gao stood on his tiptoes and looked at Xuerengui's back anxiously. Seeing that Xuerengui had run far away, he helplessly turned around and said, "Did you hear that, Yu Dazhuang? Quickly grab your weapons and call the rest of the villagers. Follow me to save Marquis. Let the women and children in the village hide at home. Don't go to the mountains. What if they encounter a pack of wolves? Quick!" Yu Dazhuang had already woken up. He quickly replied, "Okay. Li Zheng. I'll go inform the rest of the villagers. The children's mother, take the children and hide at home. Don't come out. I'll be back soon with Li Zheng." After saying that, Yu Dazhuang quickly walked towards a small courtyard of a farmer's house in the east. If Li Zishuan was not at Longmen Pass, Yu Dazhuang would never have the guts to fight with the Turkic army. Now, no matter how brave the Turkic people were, he had to go because Li Zishuan was the benefactor of the entire Longmen County. He had to repay him for saving his life. Moreover, if they could block the Turkic army outside Longmen Pass, they would have saved his family. The woman behind him shouted worriedly, "Husband, you have to be careful." Because many villagers had already been awakened by the battle cries in the direction of Longmen Pass, it didn't take long for 40 to 50 youths with wooden bows, sickles, and shovels to gather at the entrance of Xiu Village. Under the leadership of Gao Lijing, this small group quickly headed towards Longmen Pass. Moreover, the other villagers of Xiu Village were also informing the other villages. It wouldn't be long before the other villages also sent a group of youths to support Longmen Pass. I didn't expect the Tang army to prepare rolling stones and logs in advance. We can't go on like this. The Tang army behind us is about to arrive. I wonder if the state teacher has a good idea? In front of Longmen Pass, under the Turkic army's flag, Ashina Shi turned his head and asked Wu Jie. At this moment, Wu Jie was sitting cross-legged on his horse with his eyes closed, seizing the time to recover his internal strength. After all, a great grandmaster was also a human. From last night until now, not only did he not sleep for a moment, he also fought with several experts and thousands of Tang soldiers. Whether it was internal strength or mental strength, he had consumed a lot. If it was any other person, they definitely wouldn't be able to last until now. Hearing Ashina Shier's question, Wu Jie opened his eyes and said, "The Tang army has been guarding the gate for so long, but Li Zishuan hasn't come out. This means that Li Zishuan has completely lost his ability to fight. In the Tang army, there are no experts who can fight against this state teacher. At this moment, I have recovered 60% of my strength. Perhaps I can help you break the gate." Wu Jie understood Ashina Shier's meaning. He was now the strongest person in the Turkic army. In this battle of life and death, he couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Besides, now that Longmen Pass didn't have the little monster Li Zishuan as a threat, he could be even more unscrupulous. Hearing this, Ashina Shier's face lit up with excitement. He laughed heartily and said, "With state teacher's words, this general can rest assured. After we take back the books of Yanwang College, and kidnap the Marquis of Yong'an. Ashina Shi-er will definitely ask the Khan for a reward for state teacher. Wu Jie didn't respond. He changed from sitting cross-legged on his horse to riding. No one could see his face under the black robe, and no one could tell whether he was happy or angry at this moment. A moment later, he stretched out his hand and said in a hoarse voice, "Bring this state teacher's mace over." Previously, he had been sitting cross-legged on his horse to heal, so he naturally didn't carry the heavy mace on his back. Although he didn't care about the weight, it would inevitably affect his healing. Yes! The two Turkic soldiers carried Wu Jie's mace over, and from their expressions, it was clear that this mace was extremely heavy, at least 100 or 200 jin. But Wu Jie stretched out his arm and easily grabbed the mace. Then, he lightly said, "This state teacher will go and break the gate. You take the elite wolf cavalry and follow behind." His tone didn't allow anyone to object. Clearly, he was the one who had the final say here. Ashina Shi-er's face didn't show any displeasure. Instead, he respectfully cupped his fists and said, "State teacher can rest assured. This general will definitely not fall behind." Wu Jie imperceptibly nodded. Then, he stroked the mane of his warhorse and muttered meaningfully, "What a pity for such a good horse." Saying so, he no longer hesitated. He kicked the horse's belly and shouted, "Hiya! Pung pung pung!" Soon, Wu Jie's warhorse began to crazily accelerate, becoming faster and faster until it couldn't distinguish between friend and foe. The Turkic soldiers in front of Wu Jie who were attacking the gate were all sent flying by his warhorse. Wu Jie rode alone, wielding his mace like an unparalleled war god, rapidly charging towards the gate. It's Wu Jie. What does he want to do? On the city gate tower, Lu Xianda quickly noticed Wu Jie charging out of the Turkic army and was somewhat surprised and puzzled. Standing next to him, Fang Gongting took a closer look and suddenly paled. "He wants to break the gate, quick! Everyone, quickly fire arrows in that direction." The Dragon Gate Pass was different from the Yemen Pass. The walls here were much wider, with a width of nearly 300 feet. It was more than enough to accommodate 1,000 or 2,000 archers standing in 2 rows. Under Lu Xianda's command, the first batch of archers on the gate tower changed their target, shooting in Wu Jie's direction. Afterwards, the first row of archers crouched down to reload their arrows, while the second row of archers continued to shoot in Wu Jie's direction. Xiu xiu xiu. A sky full of arrows rained down on Wu Jie, but Wu Jie showed no fear. He didn't slow down his horse at all. With one hand holding the reins and the other holding the mace, he waved it in front of him. The powerful true qi in his body spread out through the mace, quickly forming a true qi cover in front of him. All the arrows that came within 3 feet of him were all sent flying. In this way, the Turkic soldiers around Wu Jie were completely out of luck. Wu Jie could block the sky full of arrows, but they couldn't. After 3 volleys of arrows, there wasn't a single Turkic soldier standing next to Wu Jie. Of course, this wasn't necessarily a bad thing for Wu Jie, because this meant that there was no one in front of him to block his path. Thus, his warhorse once again sped up, leaving behind no one in the dust. 50 zhang, 40 zhang, 30 zhang, 20 zhang. In the blink of an eye, Wu Jie was only 20 zhang away from the gate. On the city gate tower, Hong Wenxing and Fang Gongting saw Wu Jie's brave and invincible stance and couldn't help but feel a sense of powerlessness. Facing a martial grandmaster-level Turkic wolf cavalry as the vanguard, defending the city had become very difficult. They were already in a weak position, and with the addition of a martial grandmaster-level Wu Jie, they were even more powerless. This was somewhat similar to the words Xiang Yu had said when he committed suicide in the Wu River. "Now that I am trapped here, the death of the heavens is not my fault. Not my fault. If the Dragon Gate really fell tonight, it wouldn't be because there was a problem with their command, but rather because Wu Jie's personal strength was too strong. One man could fight against 1,000 soldiers." On top of the city gate tower, The archers were frantically firing arrows in Wu Jie's direction, but none of them seemed to be of any use. The rain of arrows didn't seem to be able to harm Wu Jie in the slightest. When he was about 15 meters away from the city gate, Wu Jie slapped his horse's back and leapt off. Taking advantage of the super speed he had gained from riding his horse, Wu Jie kicked his horse's head with all his might, gaining another burst of speed. Grabbing his mace, he flew towards the city gate at an even faster speed. The warhorse was hit by Wu Jie's kick in the air and immediately let out a mournful whine, blood gushing out of its head as it collapsed to the ground. At this moment, Wu Jie was still in the air, swinging his mace to block the incoming arrows while secretly accumulating his strength. Once he reached the gate, he would use his strongest attack and blow the gate open. At this moment, a young man climbed up the stairs from the side of the city gate tower. The soldiers who saw him were stunned at first, but quickly stepped forward to stop him. However, the young man didn't have time to explain and directly jumped up, stepping on the shoulders of the soldiers, and quickly flew towards the edge of the city wall. After seeing Wu Jie rapidly approaching, the young man didn't hesitate. While in the air, he knocked an arrow and aimed at Wu Jie. Xiu xiu xiu. The youth shot out like a bolt of lightning, releasing 3 arrows in quick succession. Bolstered by the youth's true qi, the 3 arrows flew towards Wu Jie's chest and ribs in a triangular formation. The speed of the arrows was so fast that they actually created 3 sonic booms as they flew through the air. Wu Jie, who was flying towards the gate, suddenly felt a sense of crisis. Looking up, he saw 3 arrows flying towards him at an extraordinary speed. Danger! These 3 arrows had the ability to pierce through his true qi defense. Almost in an instant, Wu Jie made such a judgment in his heart. Thus, he quickly raised his mace and swung it in the direction of the 3 arrows. Ding ding ding! The 3 arrows collided with Wu Jie's mace one after another, but in the end, the 3 ants were unable to shake the elephant. Wu Jie wasn't injured by the young man's 3 arrows, but because he had to block the 3 arrows, his speed had slowed down a notch. However, he still had to break through the Dragon Gate tonight. Wu Jie faintly glanced in the direction of the young man's battle, then ignored him and continued to fly towards the city gate. Because after a few more meters, because of the angle, the people on the city wall wouldn't be able to shoot arrows at him. At that time, he would be able to use the strength he had accumulated for so long to break through the gate. Xuerengui? You're the Xuerengui who hunted in the mountains during the day? The sudden appearance of the 3 arrows not only disrupted Wu Jie's rhythm, but also shocked Fang Gongting and Lu Xianda, who were commanding the battle from the city tower. During the day, when the army had been marching, Li Zixuan had greatly praised Xuerengui's archery skills. At that time, all of them had been present. Now, seeing Xuerengui suddenly climb up the city tower and decisively shoot arrows at Wu Jie, Fang Gongting and Lu Xianda were both surprised and stunned. 2 generals, where is Marquis? Xuerengui didn't have time to exchange pleasantries with the 2 of them. Once again, he knocked another arrow and aimed at Wu Jie, instantly releasing another 3 arrows. After that, he let out a sigh of relief. Not bothering to look at the results, he directly asked Fang Gongting and Lu Xianda. Chapter 1549. Xuerengui was only at the peak of Qi transforming stage, so he knew that even if he was skilled in archery, he wouldn't be able to withstand the attacks of the black-robed, mace-wielding Turkic master. According to his estimation, this person was at least at the peak of martial scholar realm, and only Li Zixuan had a chance of stopping him, which was why he asked. Marquis is seriously injured and unconscious. He is currently recuperating in a quiet place. Lu Xianda replied in a low voice. Xuerengui's heart sank. On one hand, he was worried about Li Zixuan's injuries, but on the other hand, he was worried about the city's defense. Obviously, He didn't think that this seemingly tall and heavy city gate could withstand Wu Jie's full force attack. Below the city gate tower, Wu Jie once again deflected Xuerengui's 3 arrows, and although his speed was a bit slower, he was already within 5 zhang of the city gate. From this position, it would be very difficult for the archers on the city gate tower to hit him. 5 zhang, 4 zhang, 3 zhang, 2 zhang, 1 zhang. In just a few breaths of time, Wu Jie finally arrived in front of the city gate. The majestic true qi that had been accumulating in his arms suddenly erupted, and the mace once again flashed with lightning. Wu Jie gripped the end of the mace with both hands, raised it above his head, and with his previous speed, swung it down at the city gate. Peng! The mace collided with the thick iron gate, creating a deafening sound that seemed to pierce through the night sky. At the same time, a powerful recoil was transmitted through the mace to Wu Jie, sending him flying backwards. On the city gate tower, Xuerengui, Hong Wenxing, Fang Gongting, Lu Xianda, and the others only felt the tower shake under their feet, and the sound of the collision almost pierced their eardrums. Those with weaker cultivation couldn't help but cover their ears, but many of them were bleeding from the corners of their mouths. From this, it could be seen how terrifying Wu Jie's full-force attack was. However, this wasn't important. The most important thing right now was the situation of the city gate. If the city gate was broken, then the Tang army on the city wall would face the merciless slaughter of the Turkic wolf cavalry. On the other hand, if the city gate wasn't broken, Fang Gongting, Hong Wenxing, and the others could hold on until reinforcements arrived. Damn it! Which little brat dares to ruin this imperial teacher's plans? The first person to see the situation of the city gate was none other than Wu Jie. Wu Jie was sent flying back over 200 meters by the powerful rebound force from the city gate, barely managing to stabilize himself. After all, the effect of force was reciprocal. No matter how much force his mace exerted on the city gate would reflect the same amount of force back to him. After Wu Jie stabilized himself, he saw that the dragon gate was on the verge of collapsing, but it hadn't completely collapsed. Wu Jie couldn't help glancing over at Xuerengui with an ugly expression as he muttered under his breath. According to Wu Jie's previous charging speed, this mace infused with all his true qi should have been able to break open the dragon gate without a problem. However, Xuerengui's consecutive 3 arrows had slowed down his speed by 20%, so the impact of the mace was naturally weakened by 20%. Therefore, although the dragon gate was on the verge of collapse, it hadn't collapsed yet. If it weren't for Xuerengui's sudden appearance, the dragon gate really might have been blown open by Wu Jie's mace. It's not broken. Join the army, the gate hasn't been broken. In the Tang army camp, a soldier quickly went down to check the situation of the city gate. When he found that the gate hadn't been broken, he quickly went up the tower to report to Fang Gongting and Hong Wenxing. It hasn't been broken, that's good. Fang Gongting nodded happily. Wu Jie's mace had left a lingering fear in his heart. At that time, he could feel the city wall under his feet shaking. Now that he knew the gate hadn't been broken, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. But the next words of the messenger soldier made Fang Gongting unhappy. Join the army, the gate is shaking. I don't think it can withstand Wu Jie's second attack. What? Fang Gongting almost vomited blood. After a moment of depression, he quickly ordered, "Quick! Send people to reinforce the gate. Pile up all the heavy objects behind the gate. We can't let Wu Jie break it." "Yes. Join the army." The messenger soldier cupped his fists and turned to leave. "Marquis, if you're fine, how could those Turks be so arrogant in my Tang Empire? Please get better quickly, nothing must happen to you." On the other side, in the cellar below the long men passed, Dr. Lu also heard the deafening sound of Wu Jie's mace breaking the gate. He got up and looked at Li Zixuan, who was lying on the straw couch with his eyes closed, and anxiously muttered to himself. He wasn't afraid of death, but he was worried that after the Turks broke the gate, Not only would they kill and loot the nearby villages, causing great suffering, he was also worried that the Turks would carry out a carpet search to find this place and capture Li Zishuan. At this time, Li Zishuan could be said to be powerless. If he was found by the Turks, he wouldn't have the slightest ability to resist. Thus, Dr. Liu was secretly worried. As for Li Zishuan, at this time, his situation wasn't very good. During the battle with Wu Jie, his body had undergone a strange change, and in a very short time, he had recovered 60% of his true qi. However, this was only the recovery of his true qi, and the injuries caused by Wu Jie's powerful lightning energy had not healed. Moreover, when he used the origin-returning sword on Wu Jie, not only had he exhausted the little bit of true qi he had just recovered, he had also aggravated his internal injuries. Because of Wu Jie's powerful true qi, Yang Kai's internal organs had been displaced, and the residual lightning energy in his meridians had taken advantage of the opportunity to wreak havoc in his meridians, causing his current situation to become even worse. The strand of spiritual qi of heaven and earth in his body was no longer able to create a miracle. Instead, it had completely quieted down and did not move at all. However, Li Zishuan wasn't completely unconscious. He could hear the situation outside, but he couldn't open his eyes or mouth. He was like a living dead with only a little bit of consciousness left. Li Zishuan knew that the Turks were attacking the Dragon Gate, and he also knew that the Dragon Gate wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. He knew all of this, and he was very anxious in his heart, but he couldn't do anything. He used all of his strength, but he couldn't even move a finger, let alone open his eyes or get out of bed to fight. At this time, if only Sun Simiao was here. Because old Sun was not only a divine doctor, but also had a pure Taoist qi in his body, which was extremely beneficial for healing his internal injuries. Not good. Wu Jie is coming again. On the city gate tower, Xuerengui's face changed, and he anxiously shouted. It was Wu Jie, who was below the city gate tower, who had mounted a war horse and was planning to use the same trick to attack the city gate again. Release the arrows. Quickly release the arrows. Prepare the rolling stones and logs. As soon as Wu Jie gets close to the city gate, push them down. Fang Gongting's face suddenly became extremely ugly. The Dragon Gate was already on the verge of collapse after Wu Jie's first attack. If Wu Jie knocked it down a second time, how could the gate withstand it? Yes. Join the army. Wu Jie's bravery also made the soldiers on the city gate tower a little scared, but they were all soldiers, and they had an innate instinct to obey orders. Hearing Fang Gongting's order, everyone braced themselves, overcame the fear in their hearts, and rushed towards Wu Jie's direction, drawing their bows and launching another attack. Xuerengui also didn't stay idle. He once again raised the big iron bow in his hand, knocked an arrow, and directly pulled the bowstring. With a xiao sound, an arrow whistled through the air and flew towards Wu Jie. Xuerengui didn't stop, and continued to knocking the bowstring, drawing the bow, and shooting. All of these movements were done in one breath, and only after shooting 3 arrows in succession did he stop for a moment and take a deep breath. Although these 3 arrows seemed easy to shoot, only he knew how much true qi it took for a qi transformation junior like him to shoot these 3 arrows. He felt that he could shoot 3 more arrows at most before exhausting his true qi. Below the city gate tower, Wu Jie easily used his mace to deflect Xuerengui's 3 arrows, and although his speed was a little slower, he was only 10 meters away from the city gate. From this position, if he took another 2 steps forward, the people on the city gate tower wouldn't be able to shoot him. Xuerengui took a deep breath and leaped onto the wall of the city gate tower. His body was slightly tilted towards the outside of the city, and it looked like he would fall off the city gate tower at any moment. Fang Gongting and the prefecture soldiers on the city gate tower saw this, and their hearts were in their throats. They were afraid that Xuerengui would lose his balance and fall off. If he fell, no one would be able to save him. It would be like a sheep walking into a tiger's den. Xuerengui calmed his mind, and after adjusting his body's center of gravity, he knocked an arrow on his bow and concentrated his true qi into his palm. Unlike before, this time he was going to shoot 3 arrows at the same time. His eyes stared unblinkingly at the rapidly flying Wu Jie. At the same time, he had already calculated in his mind where Wu Jie would be when the arrow reached him. Xuerengui had condensed all of his essence, energy, and spirit into these 3 arrows. They were also the 3 strongest arrows he had ever shot in his life. Xiu xiu xiu. Just as the big iron bow was fully drawn, Xuerengui finally released the bowstring, and the 3 arrows shot out like streaks of light, arriving in front of Wu Jie in the blink of an eye. At this time, if Wu Jie were to rely on his hearing to block Xuerengui's 3 arrows, he would definitely be hit, because Xuerengui's 3 arrows had already surpassed the speed of sound, and by the time Wu Jie heard the sound, the arrows had already reached his body. However, Wu Jie was a martial grandmaster, and his perception of danger was far more sensitive than ordinary people. When the 3 arrows left the bowstring, Wu Jie had already felt a sense of crisis, so by the time the arrows arrived in front of him, Wu Jie had already raised his mace to block Xuerengui's 3 arrows. Ding ding ding! Another 3 arrows struck the mace, but unlike before, in order to block Xuerengui's 3 arrows, Wu Jie's speed had decreased by 20%. However, for the city gate that was on the verge of collapse, this speed was more than enough. When the time comes, I'll capture that annoying little guy on the city wall, and bring him back to the Turks, Wu Jie secretly thought to himself. Sneaking into Great Tang this time had given him a big shock. He hadn't expected there to be so many experts in the Central Plains, especially the younger generation of Great Tang, such as Dugu Xian, Dugu Feiying, Yuqi Baolin, Li Zishuan, Xuerengui, and many others. The dynasties of the Central Plains were full of talents, and the Turks were far from being able to compare. Although Wu Jie thought this, strangely, he didn't feel the slightest bit of sadness or worry. This was truly not in line with his status as the Turkic imperial teacher. All soldiers, hear my order. Once the city gate is broken, immediately charge in. Seeing Wu Jie's invincible bravery, Ashina Shur was overjoyed. At this time, he pulled out the scimitar at his waist and loudly shouted, "Yes!" The morale of the Turkic army soared, and they all shouted in response. On the other hand, the Tang army, "Generals, please order all soldiers to go down and meet the enemy. This Xue has done his best." Xuerengui's face was pale as he retreated from the city wall and spoke to Fang Gongting and Hong Wenxing with a heavy expression. Everyone understood what he meant, and they all knew that Longmen Pass would not be able to withstand Wu Jie's second attack. Fang Gongting's expression was grave as he loudly shouted, "All soldiers, hear my order. Go down the city wall and fight to the death with the Turks. Tonight, we swear to defend Longmen Pass to the death. Fight to the death. Defend Longmen Pass to the death. Fight to the death. Defend Longmen Pass to the death." The Tang army on the city wall began to move, and a solemn atmosphere quickly filled the entire Longmen Pass. The Tang people loved to fight, and they were not afraid of battle. In order to protect their home, they were willing to give up everything. On the other side, Wu Jie's mace was already within 5 zhang of the city gate. In the blink of an eye, he would be able to hit the city gate again. Dogs really can't change their habits. Have you all forgotten the boulder at the edge of the Een Mountain? But at this moment, an unusually loud and angry roar suddenly came from the night sky. Immediately after, a long sword with a cold gleam rapidly spiraled down from the sky, heading straight for Wu Jie's next position. Ho ho ho! The cold gleam of the long sword whistled through the air, and in the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of Wu Jie. The bone-chilling cold and powerful true qi coming from the long sword caused Wu Jie's expression to change. He didn't dare to recklessly receive this sword. Retreat! Wu Jie quickly fell down, using his mace to stop himself from moving forward, and then directly retreated. That long sword, on the other hand, had directly sunk 1 foot into the ground. The surrounding corpses, grass, and rocks were all blown away. The area within a radius of 3 feet around the longsword had turned into an empty space that couldn't be any cleaner. Subsequently, a young man with long hair, dressed in a white robe, and carrying a sword case on his back lightly descended from the sky, and he just so happened to land within a radius of 1 meter. His posture was elegant, but his aura was extremely cold and arrogant. Chapter 1550. The bright moon of the Qin and Han dynasties had yet to return from their long march. But with Long Qingfei here, no who would be allowed to cross the Yin Mountain. Ever since the Qin and Han dynasties, the Yin Mountain had never stopped fighting. There had always been disputes between the Han and Hu people, as well as grudges and grudges. At the end of the Sui dynasty, a major event happened here that shook the world. An old man in a green Taoist robe killed more than 200 Turkic wolf riders, who were famous in the world and had been raiding a village to the south of the Yin Mountain. Then, he piled the rolling heads on the border between the grassland and the Yin Mountain and built a temple. He also erected a stone tablet with a cross written on it: "Those who offend the Central Plains will be killed, no matter how far away they are." Ling Su. Spiritual master Ling Su's terrifying battle prowess was undoubtedly a great psychological deterrent to the Turks. Although the Turks had a large army, no one could guarantee that they would never be left alone. Thus, ever since then, although the Turks would occasionally go south to take advantage of the situation, they no longer dared to massacre villages and cities like before. This was because they were afraid that their heads would fall on that Jingguan temple. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, more than 10 years had passed. Now that someone mentioned the massacre at the Yin Mountain, the Turkic soldiers thought of the past and felt a chill in their hearts. Ashina Shirchu rode his horse forward and stared at the white-clothed man with a dark expression. He asked in a deep voice, "Who are you?" On the city gate tower, the Tang soldiers who had originally planned to go down and fight to the death with the Turkic army suddenly saw a young man descend from the sky and beat back the arrogant and invincible Turkic state teacher Wu Jie with a single sword. In their despairing and tragic hearts, a glimmer of hope instantly rose. They all stopped and looked at the white-clothed man who was facing off against the Turkic army. Facing Ashina Shirchu, the white-clothed man was not afraid. Perhaps he did not put Ashina Shirchu in his eyes from the beginning to the end. He unhurriedly pulled out the long sword that was stabbed into the ground. Then, he reached into his bosom with his left hand and took out a navy blue handkerchief. He actually wiped the sword in front of Ashina's serpent. "You!" Ashina Shirchu's expression changed slightly. Although his status in the Turkic Empire was not as high as Wu Jie's, he was still the man of the Turkic Khagan. When had he ever been humiliated like this? Seeing that the white-clothed man was ignoring him and wiping his sword, Ashina Shirchu almost couldn't help but go berserk. Fortunately, reason prevailed over impulse, and Ashina Shirchu did not directly draw his sword at the white-clothed man. Otherwise, his head would have been separated from his body. Since the white-clothed man could force Wu Jie to retreat, it was not to say that his strength was higher than Wu Jie's, but it was not much lower. With this kind of strength, if Ashina Shirchu rashly faced him, he would definitely be defeated. Just as Ashina Shirchu was about to explode in anger, Wu Jie finally walked over. Stepping forward, he invisibly blocked Ashina Shirchu behind him. No one knew what expression was on the face hidden under the black robe, but they could tell that Wu Jie's eyes were now fixed on the white-clothed man. After staring at him for a long time, the white-clothed man finally wiped the dirt off his sword. The long sword reflected the moonlight and gave off a cold light, faintly giving people the illusion that the moonlight was like water, and so was the sword. Seeing the white-clothed man put away the handkerchief, Wu Jie finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Not yet a great grandmaster, you are inferior to me. Having his cultivation seen through by Wu Jie at a glance, the white-clothed man did not show the slightest surprise on his face, instead a meaningful smile appeared on his face. So what? Who is strong and who is weak, who wins and who loses, we will know once we fight. His voice carried a trace of coldness and arrogance, but it was also full of magnetism. If any of the modern star-chasing girls were here at this moment, they would probably be screaming madly. Let's fight and we will know. Even if he knew that his cultivation was not as good as Wu Jie's, the white-clothed man was not afraid to fight, and from his words, one could even hear a faint trace of excitement, as if he couldn't wait to fight Wu Jie. His tone was relaxed and indifferent, his posture confident and relaxed. The white-clothed man was like a celestial being from the heavens, confident and proud, able to block soldiers, block water, whatever the world threw at him. He feared nothing. This imperial tutor has never fought with nameless people. Who are you? Being provoked by the white-clothed man like this, Wu Jie was a little annoyed. He was also a very proud person. How could he allow others to act so wildly above his head? Although he knew that his true qi was only at 50 to 60% of his peak state, he still had to stand, and he believed that he could defeat this arrogant junior in front of him. Humph. If you want to fight, then let's fight. The dignified imperial tutor actually dares to speak so much nonsense. The white-clothed man waved his sword in his right hand, then proudly looked at Wu Jie and said, "The one who injured you today is Dragon Tiger Mountain, Xian Qing." Dragon Tiger Mountain, Xian Qing. These 5 short words were spoken sonorously, and although his voice was not loud, it reached everyone's ears. Xian Qing. It's Dragon Tiger Mountain's Taoist Xian Qing. On the city gate tower, Shui Rengui, Fang Gongting, Hong Wenxing, and the others all stared in shock, their faces filled with disbelief, but this was quickly followed by ecstasy. Hearing this, Wu Jie remained silent, not showing any exaggerated reaction. On the other hand, Ashina Shi's heir Chu couldn't help taking 2 steps back after hearing the white-clothed man's identity. "You're from Longhu Mountain? What is your relationship with Ling Su?" When the white-clothed man appeared, he said, "Have you all forgotten the stone tablet at the foot of Yin Mountain?" Now that he said he came from Mount Longhu, Ashina Shi's heir Chu subconsciously thought of spiritual master Ling Su, who had already passed away. "Huh. You still remember my senior brother? Since that is the case, why did you invade the Central Plains again today? Do you want to be buried here?" This time, the white-clothed man did not ignore Ashina Shi Chu, but looked at him lightly, then sneered. "Senior brother? You are Ling Su's junior brother?" Ashina Shi Chu was stunned. Shui Rengui, Fang Gongting, and the others had heard of Xian Qing's name, but as a Turkic, Ashina Shi Chu had never heard of it before. Now that he heard that Xian Qing was Ling Su's junior brother, how could he not be surprised? Good. Back then, this master had no chance to fight with Ling Su, but today, I will see how much skill his junior brother has. Wu Jie now thoroughly understood the white-clothed man's identity, and couldn't help laughing. Originally, it was supposed to be a hearty laugh, but because Wu Jie's voice was hoarse, it made everyone who heard it feel a chill run down their spines. Thunder Overlord Mace. Without waiting for Xian Qing to respond, Wu Jie leapt into the air, raised his mace with both hands, and smashed it down towards Xian Qing's head. 9 Taishan swords, first form, ride the wind. Riding the wind to the 9 heavens. Facing Wu Jie's overbearing strike, Xian Qing didn't show the slightest fear, raising his sword and leaping into the air. At the same time, an extremely pure sword intent burst out from his body, causing the soldiers closest to Xian Qing to feel like their minds were filled with images of blades and swords. Both were 9 Taishan swords, and both were the first form of the 9 Taishan swords, but Xian Qing's Ride the Wind, whether in terms of power or momentum, was far stronger than Li Zishuan's. This was the real 9 Taishan swords. Xian Qing wielded his sword and pointed it straight at Wu Jie. The two of them soon met in midair, sword and mace colliding with each other, emitting a resounding metallic clang. This was just the beginning of their fight, both of them pouring their true qi into their weapons and knocking each other back. Wu Jie was forced back 3 steps, while Xian Qing was forced back 5 steps. It was obvious that the gap between Xian Qing, who had yet to reach the martial grandmaster realm, and Wu Jie wasn't very big. This scene, in the eyes of Shui Rengui, Fang Gongting, and the others, were naturally overjoyed. After all, a man's name was like a tree's shadow, and in everyone's eyes, Wu Jie was an insurmountable mountain. Now that Xian Qing was only slightly at a disadvantage against Wu Jie, in the eyes of Shui Rengui and the others, this was already very amazing. However, Xian Qing seemed to be somewhat dissatisfied with this result, frowning slightly, and then changing the direction of his sword. He actually took the initiative to attack Wu Jie. 9 Taishan swords, second form, graceful grace. Graceful grace, soaring dragon. Carrying the lingering power of the first sword, riding the wind, Xian Qing's sword moved even faster, the sword qi attached to it bursting out. Everyone below, whether it was the Turkic army or the Tang army, at this moment, all felt as if a dragon was soaring through the sky, baring its fangs and claws as it rushed towards Wu Jie. The momentum was vast, and the sword qi was overwhelming. Wu Jie's face paled slightly, and with a loud shout, the mace in his hand suddenly began to glow with lightning, and he raised it again to meet the incoming attack. Peng! The two weapons collided and another loud bang rang out. This time, Wu Jie was forced back 4 steps, and Xian Qing was also forced back 4 steps. Xian Qing felt a numbness in his palm, and the strange power of thunder and lightning was about to enter his meridians. He snorted and quickly used his genuine qi to dissolve the power of thunder and lightning. Then, without pausing for a moment, he followed up with the third form of 9 Taishan swords, snow treading. Snow treading without a trace, swift as a swallow. Xian Qing was very clear on where the 9 Taishan sword's strength lay, so he would not give Wu Jie a chance to breathe, nor would he give himself a chance to breathe. He wanted to use the first 8 swords of the 9 Taishan swords in one go, wanting to use the superimposed power of the 9 Taishan swords to completely defeat Wu Jie in his weakened state. Wu Jie continued to wave his mace to block Xian Qing's unexpected sword moves, but Xian Qing changed his move again. 9 Taishan swords, 4th form, wave breaker. Wave breaker, tyrannical sea, thunderous fury. 9 Taishan swords, 5th form, parting dust. 1 sword, desolate and cold. 9 Taishan swords, 6th form, flowing cloud. Broken smoke, flowing cloud, never return. 9 Taishan swords, 7th form, phantom shadow, knowing that all is an illusion. In the blink of an eye, the first 7 swords of the 9 Taishan swords had been used by Xian Qing, and compared to Li Zishuan, each of Xian Qing's sword moves was much more powerful. As a result, when the phantom shadow of the 7th form appeared, Wu Jie was suddenly surrounded by 16 sword-wielding Xian Qing swords. What's more, these 10 Xian Qing swords were all real people, and each of them used a different sword move, making it even harder for Wu Jie to defend. The situation on the battlefield was rapidly changing, and both sides were quietly switching positions. Chapter 1551. Reinforcements. Reinforcements are here. Longmen Pass is saved. As the saying went, the higher one stood, the farther one could see. The Tang soldiers on the city gate tower looked to the west and saw a black mass of cavalrymen holding torches galloping toward them. At first glance, there were at least 20,000 to 30,000 cavalrymen. Therefore, the soldiers on the city gate tower immediately became excited and cheered loudly. They had survived a calamity. At this moment, they could only use the phrase, surviving a calamity, to describe their feelings. At the very beginning, when the Turkic army of tens of thousands attacked, Longmen Pass only had around 1,000 soldiers. Fortunately, Fong Gongting and the others had brought back more than 8,000 soldiers in time. But even with more than 10,000 people, defending Longmen Pass would be very difficult. This was because the Turkic army had a martial grandmaster. In a battle, although a martial grandmaster could not completely control the situation, they could still affect the balance of victory and defeat. This could be seen from how Wu Jie had single-handedly blasted open the gate. If not for a peerless expert like Xianqing arriving in time to keep Wu Jie in check, Longmen Pass might have already been breached. But the two sides were only keeping each other in check. The defenders of Longmen Pass did not have the strength to launch a counterattack against the Turkic army. But now, things were different. Not only had they defended Longmen Pass, they could also work with the reinforcements that had just arrived to launch a counterattack against the Turkic army. The attackers and defenders had changed hands once more. All soldiers, hear my order. The Turkic army has invaded the territory of the Great Tang and cannot be forgiven. Follow this general out of the city and pursue the Turkic wolf cavalry. Fong Gongting was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. He let out a loud roar and said with lofty sentiment, "Kill, kill, kill." The morale of the 10,000 Tang soldiers on the gate tower soared. Join the army. Many villagers from the nearby villages are coming from the south. They want to help us defend the city and protect Marquis. At this moment, a soldier hurriedly walked over and cupped his fist to Fong Gongting. Villagers? Fong Gongting raised an eyebrow in surprise. Hong Wenxing chuckled and said, "Ha ha! It seems like Marquis is also very popular in Jiangzhou." But now that reinforcements had arrived, there was no need to let these civilians get involved to avoid unnecessary casualties. Adjunct Fong, you only need to lead the soldiers out of the city to pursue the Turkic army. This official will pacify the common people in your place. Yes, I'll have to trouble Provincial Governor Hong then. Fong Gongting also understood that Hong Wenxing's words were reasonable. He cupped his fists and replied. With that, he turned around and roared, "Generals, listen to my order. Go out of the city and pursue." Here, the army roared in agreement. Soon after, under the command of Fong Gongting, the 10,000 soldiers quickly descended from the gate tower. With a creak, the gate that Wu Jie had tried his best to smash open was opened from the inside by the Tang army. However, the Turkic army no longer cared about the gate, because they had already begun to flee. Who is the main general of the Dragon Gate army? The army in the Longmen Pass rushed out. At this moment, a soldier rushed out from the reinforcement team in the west and shouted at them. "I am Fong Gongting from Bing Province, temporarily in charge of the defense of Longmen Pass. May I ask which province you are from? This Fong is very grateful." Fong Gongting commanded the army to pursue the Turkic army as he reined in his warhorse and cupped his fists politely to the soldier. The soldier quickly cupped his fists and replied, "Adjunct Fong, we are from Qizhou. Please come forward. Our provincial governor has something to ask you." Qizhou, these reinforcements are from Qizhou. Fong Gongting could not help but be shocked. However, when he thought about it again, he was somewhat relieved. Qizhou was located in the west of Jiang Province, while Longmen Pass was located on the west side of Jiang Province. The two were only separated by Pu Province, which was very close. If Qizhou could receive the news this morning and send troops as soon as possible, it was entirely possible for them to arrive at Longmen County within a few hours. However, Fong Gongting could not help but wonder why the provincial governor of Qizhou was in such a hurry to rescue Longmen Pass. This was not him being cheap, nor was he being pretentious. Under normal circumstances, the provincial governor of a province absolutely could not easily bring the troops of his own province to other provinces. If he brought them out without permission, then he would be taking a huge risk. If he was accused of leading the troops to rebel, then he would be completely done for. Therefore, there was a process of weighing the pros and cons. The Chizhou troops had rushed over so quickly, even faster than Pu Province, which was closer to Longmen Pass. This meant that after the provincial governor of Chizhou received the news that Yanmen Pass was breached and Longmen Pass was besieged, he did not hesitate and directly led the army all the way here. This made Fang Gongting very confused. As they were talking, a handsome young man wearing a scholarly robe rode over from the reinforcements. This must be the provincial governor of Chizhou. Fang Gongting was secretly shocked. This person looked very young, but he did not show it on his face. He quickly went forward and cupped his fist. This General Fang Gongting greets the provincial governor. Wang Renbiao's face was a little pale. He covered his mouth with his right hand and coughed softly. Ling Yuyao, who was beside him, quickly said worriedly, "Young master, your body, I'm fine." Wang Renbiao waved his hand and welcomed Fang Gongting. "Adjunct Fang, you don't have to be so polite. All of you have defended Longmen Pass and prevented the people from being plunged into misery and suffering. All of you are the heroes of Great Tang." Fang Gongting cupped his fists and said, "Provincial governor is too polite. Guarding Longmen Pass is my duty. I dare not be greedy." Wang Renbiao nodded and asked, "I heard that the Marquis of Yong'an is also at Longmen Pass. Where is he now?" "That's right." The reason why Wang Renbiao personally led the army to reinforce Li Zishuan was mainly because of Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan treated him as a close friend, and he had always treated Li Zishuan as a brother. How could he stand by and do nothing when his brother was in trouble? Compared to this, everything else was secondary. Even if Li Er removed him from his position because he led the army out of Chizhou without permission, Wang Renbiao had no regrets. Fang Gongting's face darkened. Marquis was heavily injured when he fought with the Turkic state preceptor. He is currently recuperating in Longmen Pass. What? Xiao Xian is heavily injured? Hearing this, Wang Renbiao couldn't help but exclaim. He couldn't care less about hiding his emotions as he hurriedly asked, "Is his injury serious? Did any doctor treat him?" Hearing Wang Renbiao call Li Zishuan by his name, Fang Gongting was a little confused. Logically speaking, the provincial governor of a province was lower in rank than the marquis. Even if they were of the same rank, there were very few people who would call each other by their names. In addition, although Fang Gongting might have heard of Wang Renbiao, the eldest son of the Wang family, he didn't know that Wang Renbiao was the provincial governor of Chizhou. After all, Wang Renbiao hadn't been in office for long and Fang Gongting had always been in Bing province. He didn't know much about the situation in Chizhou. Although he had hundreds of questions in his heart, Fang Gongting still replied, "Marquis is heavily injured and is currently unconscious. We have already invited the best doctor in Longmen County to treat Marquis. However, Marquis is suffering from internal injuries, so the doctor can't do anything about Xiaoshuan's injury?" At this moment, a magnetic and cold voice suddenly sounded behind Fang Gongting. He turned around and hurriedly said respectfully, reporting to Taoist Master Xian Qing, "The famous doctor in Longmen County can't do anything about Marquis's internal injuries." Xian Qing was Taoist Master Spirit Void's junior brother and Li Zishuan's junior martial uncle. With this relationship, Fang Gongting believed that Xian Qing would definitely not stand by and do nothing. Thinking of this, a glimmer of hope rose in Fang Gongting's eyes. Perhaps Xian Qing could really cure Li Zishuan's injury? Taoist Master Xian Qing? Wang Renbiao exclaimed in surprise. Then he seemed to remember something and couldn't help but change his expression. He looked at Fang Gongting and ordered, "Adjutant Fang, this official came with 30,000 light cavalry. Now, this official will hand them all over to you. You will lead them to chase the Turkic army. It's best if they all stay in Tang. This official will go visit Marquis Yong and..." Wang Renbiao actually had a scholarly air, but when he said, "Leave them all in Tang," his aura suddenly changed, as if he had turned into a decisive general. Scholars also had tempers. Fang Gongting was shocked. After hesitating for a moment, he solemnly cupped his fists and accepted the order. This general obeys. Thank you for your trust, provincial governor. To be honest, he had never led so many troops alone. However, at this moment, he was in danger, so he had to accept this task even if he didn't want to. Yao you are familiar with the troops in Qizhou. You go and assist Adjutant Fang. Wang Renbiao turned to Ling Yuyao and said. Yes. Ling Yuyao was worried about leaving Wang Renbiao here alone, but she looked at Xian Qing opposite her and the determined expression on Wang Renbiao's face. She could only agree in a low voice. Clearly, she knew Xian Qing's identity and knew that Wang Renbiao wouldn't be in danger if he was with Xian Qing. Fang Gongting was a little unhappy that a weak woman was suddenly inserted into the army. However, this army of 30,000 was brought by Wang Renbiao, and he had no right to criticize, so he didn't raise any objections. Seeing the Turkic army running further and further away, he hurriedly cupped his fists and said to Wang Renbiao, "This general will take his leave. I will chase after the Turkic army." "Okay." Wang Renbiao nodded. Ling Yuyao and Fang Gongting led the two armies and chased after the Turkic army. Bang! 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 Just as Wang Renbiao and Xian Qing arrived at Longmen Pass, the sound of galloping horses could be heard on the official road. "Second brother, look! The gates of Longmen Pass are open. Could it be that the Turkic army has broken through?" At the front of the army, a bearded man pointed at the open gates of Longmen Pass and asked anxiously. This man was Qing Yaojin. Qinxiong's eyes narrowed as he looked over. After a while, he shook his head and said, "It doesn't look like it. If the Turkic army has really broken through, they should be killing and looting the nearby villages. However, we haven't seen a single Turkic army along the way. This means that Longmen Pass hasn't been broken through yet. Then why is the city gate open?" Qing Yaojin's mind was filled with question marks as he couldn't understand. Maybe the Turkic army has been chased away, and the defending army of Longmen Pass went out of the city to chase after them? Yuqi Jingda said without any reason, but no one would believe him at this moment. The army quickly arrived at the city gate. Wang Renbiao was already waiting at the gate. Standing beside him was Xian Qing and Jiang Province's provincial governor, Hong Wenxing, who had just sent all the enthusiastic villagers home. It's the kid from the Wang family of Taiyuan. Qing Yaojin rode his horse to the city gate. After seeing Wang Renbiao, he said with a surprised expression, "Renbiao, why are you here?" "Oh, I remember now. You are now the provincial governor of Qizhou. Are you here to rescue Longmen Pass as well?" Qinxiong and Yuqi Jingda also looked at Wang Renbiao suspiciously. After all, he was the only familiar person here. Wang Renbiao stepped forward and cupped his hands. "Greetings to the three high dukes. I am indeed here to rescue Longmen Pass. The Turkic army has just left, and the army of Bing Province and Qizhou is desperately chasing after them. If the three high dukes want to chase after them, you should be able to catch up." Wang Renbiao knew the purpose of Qinxiong and the rest leading the army to Longmen Pass, so he spoke concisely. Hearing this, Qinxiong, Qing Yaojin, and Yuqi Jingda were all shocked. Qing Yaojin couldn't help but say, "Damn it, the Turkic army is so cowardly. I just brought people to chase after them, and they ran away. No. We have to chase after them." Qinxiong nodded and didn't bother to chat with Wang Renbiao and the rest. He waved his hand and said, "Generals, listen up. Chase after them." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.